All right. Good morning, everybody. We're about 5 minutes to 10 o'clock here. Hopefully, everybody's in the right place. We're going to do the CE class here on Airbnbs and short-term rentals and go through some strategies and things like that today. If you haven't already, please put your information in the chat log. We're looking for name, license number, email address, and phone number. That's a way that we monitor and look for attendance in the class. Also, we're going to give it a few minutes, so we're not going to start right at 10 o'clock. This morning, I've gotten multiple emails, and I guess there's been hiccups in the system getting the links out to everybody. So if you had that trouble and you made it, good job. I'm glad you made it. Do apologize for that. But helping some people and some last minute people get logged in here. So I know we're going to start a little bit later, but definitely hang tight with me here and we'll get started soon and look forward to going through this class with y'all. Okay, this is the big money in the short-term CE class. We're going to talk about different strategies and techniques to break into and then hopefully optimize and master the STR market, short-term rentals. And hopefully everybody knows when we say STRs, what we're talking about. We're talking about pieces of real estate that are being rented through the avenues that have really exploded here in the last several years, Airbnb, VRBOs, just the short-term rental, like the name implies. I'm going to go ahead and start a PowerPoint slideshow here and share my screen. So let's see here. Make sure this works. All right. Again, guys, in the chat box, if you can see the Mastering the Short-Term Rental Market slide with GREC course 76049, please, again, just type a quick yes in the chat box. Perfect. All right. Looks like everything's functioning and looking good. Appreciate it, guys. My CE promise. So real quick, some housekeeping notes before we get into the meat of this. If for some reason you do get knocked out or lose connection, please be sure when you sign back in to retype in your name and license number, email address, and phone number. If you're not seeing anything on the screen, it looks like the majority of people are. You might need to refresh or restart the Zoom meeting. Just the joys of virtual technology here that we all have become more and more accustomed to, I think, over the last several years. Yeah, please be sure to sign in. Also, the Zoom class that we have, guys, it does look and see when you're in the class and out. And I've had complaints before. Obviously, one of the big goals of this class is to make sure you get your CE credit. So be sure to sign in and do that. Because when they go and issue the CE credit at the end of this, they will review the sign-in log and make sure that you've been in for the majority of the class. So just heads up on that. Real quick, guys, my CE promise, this is always the first joke I start off with. Yes, this is one of over 76,000 CE courses that we have with GREC. And my joke is always that this will be better than at least half of all those CE courses. So, top 32,000. That's where we're aiming for here. We're shooting for the stars. But no, hopefully we get a bunch of good feedback on this course, and hopefully it'll be really good and really helpful for you. Come on screen. All right, here we go. Real quick, guys, about me. My name is Jay Alexander. I'm a loan officer with Homestar Financial. I've been in the mortgage business for over 16 years, actually almost 17. I think next month will make 17 years in the mortgage business. I do have a chemical and biomolecular engineering degree from Georgia Tech. So hopefully no one on this chat box or in the meeting here today will hold that against me, but I am a tech guy. I am married. I have 3 wonderful boys. They are 17, 14, and 11. And that really, guys, in one slide, that's about my entire life between work and married and 3 boys and all that. That's really me in a nutshell, and that's what I do. A little bit more about me, though, just some background. I've managed a hard money lending company in addition to being in the mortgage business. I've flipped several houses. I've owned multiple long-term rentals. I don't currently own any long-term rentals. I own several short-term rentals. And for me personally, I don't know of a better market to be in, especially real estate wise right now. It was Warren Buffett that said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. I love that quote. And short-term rentals, that this business, I think I can show you today different things we can do where you can set up and run and manage a short-term rental business that will make money while you're asleep. So the goals for today, we're going to talk about acquisition strategies and costs. One of the first steps to getting into this market and breaking into this market is knowing, how you plan on getting into it and what it's going to cost to be in a short-term rental. We'll talk about how to select a market and then how to select a specific property within that market for short-term rentals. Cover some of the do's and don'ts of advertising, and that's actually a purposeful typo there. We want to make sure that we have everything spelt correctly in our advertising, so you don't want to put an apostrophe in the wrong place there where don't's at. We'll talk about pricing strategies and how to maximize profit, day-to-day management of these properties. I personally am not a big fan of management companies. I manage everything myself. And the hope is that we'll give you the tools today and the information you need to purchase your first or second or fifth or 15th or whatever short-term rental. If you're looking to grow or expand, I think all this information we cover will be helpful. Also want to show you how to advise and help clients with their investment strategies. Because if you're personally, as an agent, not looking at breaking into this market right now, you probably have contacts. I'm sure you have investors and people within your sphere of influence that are also interested and may be ready to jump in a little bit sooner. And you can certainly be, I think, provide a bunch of value and information as a result of this class. We're going to cover, I call this section real estate ? In today's market. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown, even with everything going on here lately. If you don't follow a bunch of news or watch a bunch of news, in case you're not aware, we have had some rumblings of financial issues in our financial structure here in the country, with Silicon Valley Bank shuttering this weekend. And but even in spite of all that, I'm still personally very bullish and a big fan of investing in real estate right now. And I'll give you some numbers and reasons as to why I think that's the case. And then finally, with all the tools available, I want to show you how you can structure a business, how you can help someone structure a business that will make money while you're asleep. Okay. So, it should be a lot of fun. Definitely, guys, as we go through this class, please stop me and ask questions. I believe if you hold down spacebar on your computer, that will unmute you, so where you can ask a question. You can also, I think, click and actually unmute, but sometimes it's easier just to hold down spacebar to talk. You can also type any questions that you have in the chat box. I will do my best to keep my eyes on that chat box and monitor any questions that come through as we're going through it. Because again, the whole point of this class is to get you the information that you need and want, and I want to make sure we're getting all of your questions answered. Okay. So, looking forward to it, guys. We'll jump right in it. And yes, Mary, you're right. There's actually been several bank collapses, between, SVBs kind of started the process here. And, the best analogy I heard is that when the light turns on, the cockroaches all scatter. So we're finding which banks were kind of thriving more as a cockroach than as an actual asset and actually running business like they probably should. So very interesting time to watch. But like I said, we're going to jump in it right here and let's get started. So step one, so we're going to cover what I call the boring stuff first, but it's still very, very necessary. Step one, before we ever look into a market or real estate or whatever, is we've got to have an idea of how we plan on getting into a short-term rental. Okay, what is the acquisition plan? How do you plan on getting into it? And I'm going to break this up real quickly into just traditional ways to get into a property, and then more maybe outside of the box or more creative ways to get into a short-term rental. Okay. So the first thing with traditional acquisition, number one, we all know in real estate that cash is king. I have different clients, different investors that may be there. They've come into an inheritance, or they have investments in the stock market or things like that they're looking to pull out and diversify into real estate. That obviously sometimes they have plenty of cash to be able to get into real estate, so that's great. I have people who maybe own properties free and clear, and they're selling properties, liquidating properties, maybe doing a 1031 exchange to get into a short-term rental. Obviously, if you've got $300,000, $500,000, $700,000 laying around, I think it can get put to good use buying a piece of real estate, and more specifically a short-term rental. But I think we all know that cash is king in real estate. The second method for traditional acquisition is obviously going to be a traditional mortgage. And let's real briefly hit on that, guys. When it comes to buying a short-term rental, we can either classify the property as typically we can either classify it as a second home or an investment property, okay? It's very rare that you're going to be buying a property as a primary residence and living there and also doing short-term rentals out of it, even though I have seen people do that. When we're talking about second home financing, through traditional financing means, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and even if we get into bigger or more expensive properties, there's still opportunities to get into a $1 million or over $1 million properties with 10% down, okay? So the minimum down payment for second home financing is 10% down. Lots of seller concessions are allowed through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac financing. It starts off with 6%, and depending on how much money is put down, we could get as much as 9% in seller concessions or seller paid closing costs. To qualify as a second home, the home typically needs to be located in a vacation or a resort type area, and it must be occupied for part of the year. Well, one of the big allures and one of the big benefits of buying a short-term rental is lots of people want to buy a home in an area where they already visit, they like to go on vacation and things like that. And then they can also potentially break even or even make money against their mortgage payments. So it's very common for these homes to be located in vacation or resort type areas. Think about a condo on the beach, a cabin in the mountains, a lake house, things like that. That all will qualify for second home financing with flying colors. It gets a little bit trickier. I have some people that want to do short-term rentals, say near Truist Park. So they want to find a cheaper little, say, ranch home that's older, but in the area that they can rent out and make some money, especially when you've got a big Braves game series against the Yankees or something like that. That would be a little bit more challenging for that specific scenario to call that a second home, especially if someone lives in a $600,000 or $700,000 primary residence in Douglas County. But oh yeah, I'm gonna spend the night in. Good question, Susan. Typically, the guideline just says occupied for part of the year. I tell customers that the expectation is you're probably going to stay in this property somewhere between 7 and 14 days a year. So a week to 2 weeks out of the year is kind of the minimum that we're thinking. There's no way to go back in time and audit this and look at it, but most people buying a home or buying a second home, they plan on at least going to vacation in that home once a week out of the year. So that usually not a big problem. The other thing about second home financing is its standard qualification. So customers would have to qualify for the entire monthly payment on the new home, just like you would qualify if you were buying a primary residence, okay? So the biggest challenge of a second home is that we can't use the expected rental income to offset the mortgage payment. And my slide is stuck, guys, so bear with me a second. There we go, okay. If the second home option is not the best option for individuals, and obviously there's different ways where we figure that out, the other strategy through traditional financing is investment financing, or qualifying for the property as an investment property. Investment loans now, technically you can do it with as little as 15% down, but I highly recommend at least 20% down and preferably 25% down for investment financing. The biggest reason is that once we go from 20 to 25% down, the interest rates on second homes do get significantly better. Interest rates at 15% down are very, very high. And you have to remember, with standard financing and 15% down, in addition to having higher rates on an investment property, we're also going to have PMI. We're going to have mortgage insurance. And many times the cost of that higher interest rate plus the PMI makes it really, really difficult to get the properties to cash flow like we would want it to. And many times just taking a step back and saving 5% more to do 20 or 25% down more than pays for itself in the long run. Okay. But just so you know, it can be done with as little as 15% down. Seller concessions are allowed on investment financing, but the maximum allowed is only 2% towards closing. And that can sometimes be a problem because closing costs, especially if we want to try to buy that rate down a little bit, can be higher on investment financing. So it's just something to know and be aware of. The benefits, though, of investment financing is that any home will work. So that home that we mentioned at Truist Park, that's right near the ball field or something like that, that may not be a vacation type home that you would want to stay in for a couple of weeks out of the year. That's okay. We can still finance any property with investment property financing. The other big benefit for investment financing is we can use the expected rental income to help qualify for the loan and to offset the mortgage payment on the home that's being purchased. Okay. So for most customers that are looking to invest in real estate right now, especially if they're looking to do short-term rentals, we usually look at second homes and investment properties. And if the customer makes enough money to qualify, we go the second home route. If not, for any reason, there's just not enough income to qualify for the full payment, that's when we flip the property to an investment property so we can use rental income to help qualify. Quick note, guys, on second home. So about a year ago, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac changed the rules. It used to be that not only could you do 10% down on second homes, you also got an interest rate break on second homes. But effective April of last year, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac now classify second homes in the same category as investment property. As a result, there's really not a significant rate advantage for qualifying for a home as a second home versus investment property. The biggest benefit is, number one, less money down. And if we do decide to do 10 or 15% down on a second home, the PMI is still cheaper on second homes than it would be on investment property. So there are some benefits to going second home, but it's not quite the deal that it was a couple years ago. Something else when we're talking about traditional financing and acquiring these properties is definitely be aware, be cognizant of condos. It's real common. The more and more investors I talk to, lots of people are interested in buying condos in these resort areas. Makes a lot of sense. And I actually own 4 condos, and I'm going to show you all my numbers here as we get deeper into the course. But there are blurred lines in the guidelines between what is classified as a condominium versus what is classified as a condotel. Okay. So condominiums will have standard financing options, 10% down second homes, 20% down investment properties. It works all day long. Condotels are places you can buy, but it operates more of like a hotel. Those properties typically start, and the only loan programs I personally have available start at 20% down, and many times it requires more than 20% down. It also has higher rates and fees. And it's hard to look at a listing online and be able to tell if it's a condominium or a condotel. In fact, we have lots of paperwork that we have to get up front to verify that we can lend on the condo. But a good rule of thumb is, because condotels have less financing, and that those condos are, because the financing is not as available, typically those condos sell for lower prices. So something I tell people all the time, I had a lady ask me once about a condo that was in, it was in the Orlando area. And she's like, man, this is a great deal. This condo is $100,000 cheaper than all the other similar condos around it. Well, we did some research and found out real quick that I couldn't do traditional financing on that condo. I had to do kind of the atypical condotel financing. And that was why the prices were lower, because it was just more expensive to finance that property. So just a heads up on that. It's something to be aware of. A good rule of thumb, by the way, is if you're looking at getting into one of these markets and it's something you're not terribly familiar with, and you'll hear me harp on this a lot, definitely partner with and get to know a local real estate agent that's familiar with it, because that is obviously really good information that'll be invaluable during the home search. Okay. The main difference between a condotel and a condo is a condotel operates more like a hotel. So many times you'll walk into a condotel and there will be a check-in desk, there'll be daily housekeeping service, there'll be linen service, things of that nature. For a traditional condo, and guys, this isn't the only thing, it would probably be a whole nother very boring 3-hour CE class to break down everything that a mortgage company looks at to classify a condominium. But a standard condominium should be something that, you know, the only common areas there's going to be is maybe the common pool that everybody can use and maybe the workout room. Everybody has access to their own unit. They have their own keys, and just the unit itself, they own that unit, and the HOA doesn't provide a whole bunch of other services like day-to-day property management, day-to-day housekeeping, and things like that. But there are condos and stuff like that all up and down the beach, specifically in the beach around Panama City. I've ran into a bunch of them. I've also ran into a bunch of them around the Orlando area. So just heads up on that. When we're talking about trying to figure out the cost with traditional acquisition, it's as simple as getting pre-qualified. And y'all bear with me, this is my one chance for a shameless plug here. With a basic loan app, we can determine your monthly payment, cash to close, max loan amount you qualify for, etc. And the best way to do that is to give my team a call, 678-552-1513. All right, that's the quickest way to reach me for any of your pre-qualification needs. So getting outside of the traditional acquisition strategies, let's talk about non-traditional, or what I call creative acquisition strategies. There's non-traditional financing available, such as bank statement loans or DSCR loans. DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio loans. The idea behind DSCR is that you would qualify for the property in and of itself as a standalone asset. And Susan, I didn't know if you could see it on the bottom of all these slides in white. It's kind of hard to see. I've got my phone number and my website down there, and I will get it typed in the chat box here as well in just a second. But DSCR loans, what you do is you qualify for the home in and of itself as one project. So for example, it doesn't matter if the property, it doesn't matter for a client if we have someone who's like a jack of all trades, or they're an entrepreneur and they own multiple businesses and they've got a good tax guy and they write everything off. Well, obviously that customer is not going to have a whole lot of income to qualify. But if we can make the one property they're looking to buy make sense, and what I mean by make sense is if the total monthly outgo on the property after taxes, insurance, HOA, mortgage, etc., is going to be $3,500, but we can document that the property is going to make $3,800 or $4,000 or $5,000 a month, then that property would qualify for a DSCR loan, because the idea is that the income coming in services and covers the debt on the property. Okay, so it's a really good way for people who wouldn't normally qualify for traditional financing to get into investment properties and to get into short-term rentals. The heads up on DSCR loans is that they do require more down, and they do have slightly higher rates and fees than traditional financing is going to have. Okay. In addition to DSCR loans, there's other ways to get into these properties. We have at Homestar, we have a program called Assets for Income, where we can actually take assets that you would have money in, checking, savings, stuff like that, and turn that into a monthly income stream to help qualify. You could maybe get with a private investor, find someone who wants to get into the business but doesn't maybe have time to run it, and you can use some of the strategies we're going to cover in this class to manage it for them and work out and negotiate maybe a percentage or something with that investor. Owner financing is actually becoming more and more prevalent in this market for two reasons. One is that interest rates are up, so an interest rate that we could give an owner could work for them and work for us compared to where mortgage rates are at right now. The other thing is we have owners who are maybe have not adjusted to the fact that the market has changed and property isn't worth maybe what they hoped it was worth. But with owner financing, maybe you can get below market financing on the property, but still give that owner the price for the home that he's looking for. So if we can negotiate a deal and financing with the owner directly, that would be a real creative way to get into the short-term rental space. I tell people, you could become a property manager, just maybe find someone to manage their property for them. Now, there are rules and licensing, and this is not a class on how to set up a property management company, but that would be a way to do it. And then the final idea that I have for kind of creative acquisition would be rent arbitrage. The idea behind rent arbitrage is that you find someone that has a property at the beach, in the mountains, on the lake, something like that, that you think would be a good short-term rental. You sign a long-term lease with that individual, maybe a 12-month or longer lease where you're going to pay them, I don't know, you guarantee them $2,400 or $3,000 or $3,500 a month, obviously, based off what you think the property is worth and what you can get for it as a short-term rental. And then you just turn around and sublease that property listed on Airbnb and VRBO and keep the difference between what you pay out and what you bring in as profits. The key there is doing some research and finding someone that maybe is in the business and wants to get out of it, or just doesn't want to have to deal with the hassle of a management company. It's just a long-term lease and then they're out. But that's a really creative way. And I know people that are absolutely making money using this strategy. So Terry, good question. Do I have any classes where I can share how I learned the ropes to get into managing? We're actually going to cover that in this class. So I'm going to show you exactly the software I use and tools to manage the properties day to day. Okay. And then yes, STR does stand for short-term rental. So when we say STR, we're talking about a property that you're going to have and list available to rent on Airbnb and VRBO and similar websites. And then I saw another question, guys, that I missed. Sorry about that. What are the fees a condotel charge? So David, it's not the condotel itself that charges specific fees. It's the fees to get into and get financing on a condotel are going to be higher. So if a standard traditional investment property loan had 1% in discount fee today, let's say, then a similar condotel loan is probably going to have 3 or 4% in discount charges. All right. So just a heads up on that. Valentina, what's my take on the rise of more investments as Airbnb? I think when I show you the numbers that I've got to show you today, you'll understand why that's a very desirable investment property to be in. I think it's the market doing what it does. And I still think there's big opportunity to get into the Airbnb space. But I'll let you draw that conclusion, positive or negative by the end of the class. Okay. All right. When it comes to if we're going to do something more creative to get into the property, you have to understand that the costs are going to be really hard to predict based off the scenario you go with. I think it's reasonable to expect less cash flow versus traditional acquisition methods if we use something outside of the box or creative to get into the property. But a lot of times it comes with less risk. My best advice for people doing this is to be sure to be very clear about agreements, percentage ownership, the owner financing. Just make sure that's all spelled out very clearly. And also, as much as possible, try to have an exit strategy. Okay. So if you're in owner financing, the last thing you want to do is put a foreclosure on your credit report if something ends up not working out, or the owner has to take it back to sell. There's just some issues there. Again, this is not a class on protecting yourself with an owner financing thing. It's work with an attorney, and maybe give me a call offline. We can talk about some things to watch out for. But as much as possible, try to have an exit strategy. David, no, the condotels are not going to have any different management structures than a standard condominium. Okay. So it's going to be the same way you would manage a condotel. Condotel would be the same way you manage any property that you would have as a short-term rental. All right. So that's the boring part of the class, or what I consider the boring part of the class. So let's get into the fun part now. All right, we've got an idea or strategy, or maybe we just want to dip our toe in the water and see what it would look like to get into a short-term rental. So let's talk about selecting a market and selecting a specific property within that market. Now, real quick, the main question everybody asks, and it's the right question to ask, is, well, how do I know how much money the property is going to make, right? But before we even get into that, I can tell you, believe it or not, the most important question you have to answer with a short-term rental is, does the area you're looking in provide local municipal support? Okay. This is a big thing. It is sweeping the nation right now, and you can probably watch your local news for a week and you'll probably see a bid on it or something. I know there was a bunch of news that came through here in the Atlanta area not long ago. But understand that hotels, we all know the names of the big hotel chains, right? Like everybody's heard of Hilton and Sheraton and Marriott and all these big companies. Well, they're big companies. They have lots and lots of money available, and they have lots of lobbying money available. And in certain cities, they've made owning and operating a short-term rental almost impossible. Okay. To name a few, I like to go skiing in Lake Tahoe. And the last time I was there, we noticed that the cabin we were staying in and the cabins around us, they were all selling for $2 and $3 million. But similar cabins down the street were selling for $700,000 and $800,000. Okay. And we saw that and we're like, what is going on? Well, we found out that the city had set up an ordinance with STRs, and they basically carved out 1 4-area block where you could operate a short-term rental, and everything outside of that area you could no longer operate as a short-term rental. So as you can imagine, the properties inside that little pocket shot up in value because they're going to make a lot more money than the homes that can't be rented out as a short-term rental. And but if you happen to buy in that market a few years ago before they passed that law, and you could see, I could see where that would be a problem and definitely eat into expected cash flow and expected profits. In Atlanta, they passed a rule where you can only own 2 short-term rentals, and you can only get a short-term rental license if your primary residence is in the city of Atlanta. And of the 2 licenses, one of them has to be the home that you actually live in. So the idea is that you can rent out a room in the home you live in Atlanta, and you can own 1 other short-term rental. And anything outside of that, you cannot own or operate a short-term rental or get a license to do it in Atlanta. I've heard of issues in Nashville. I've heard of issues in Biloxi. There's a big casino down there. That casino has a big hotel. They like to make money by renting out their rooms in their hotel, and they have a lot of sway with the local politicians in there because they pay a lot of taxes. So that just some highlights, just some few that I've heard of, but getting local support and making sure you're in markets where they support short-term rentals is absolutely critical. And it's one of the reasons that I personally stick with more of your traditional vacation spots where they have a history of the local government working with and welcoming and being friendly to people that rent out their condos and houses and things like that. Okay. So the properties that I own are in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach. If you've ever been in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, you know that they don't have anywhere near enough hotels to ever meet the demand of people that want to go hang out at the beach in the summer. So just know that, be aware of that, and understand that it really is a big deal, and making sure you're in a place that's friendly and accepting of short-term rentals is super, super helpful. Susan, to answer your question, how do you check that? It just goes back to my old point before. Work with and make sure you've got a contact with a good local real estate agent in a market that you're in, if you're not aware. That way you can ask those questions. But definitely friendly government. The last thing you want to do is buy a business and you're trying to sneak. I got a buddy of mine that he bought a property, and even though the area he's in allows short-term rentals, the HOA restricts short-term rentals. And so he doesn't really own a business. He owns a property where he's trying to convince everybody in his area that he just has lots of friends that he lets go stay for free at his condo. Again, we're not trying to operate something here illegally. We're trying to build an actual business that we can, grow with, right? So anyway, work with agents and give insight, pay attention to HOA rules, but municipal support is a big, big deal. All right. So after we've established that we found a market that is friendly to short-term rentals, how do we estimate income? Okay. And let me give you some examples, some things that I see. So a lot of times I'll see listings online. If I say the word Zillow, hopefully that's not a cuss word in this class with people paying attention to it. But so a lot of times if I look at listings on Zillow and information like that, I'll see where someone says, you know, this property did $40,000 last year in rental income. All right. Well, that's great, but what does that even mean? Does that mean you'll get 40,000? Does that mean that person stayed there 6 months out of the year and they got 40,000? Did they not stay there at all? And that was the max they could come up with, trying to rent it out all year was 40,000. If you talk to a management company, they will give you an estimate. I think you can go online and Vacasa will give you numbers. Any local management company will tell you what they've done. And as I go through this class, guys, I'm going to harp on and I'm not a real big fan of management companies, like professional management companies in these traditional areas. And I'll show you why as we go through it. But in general, I'm not a big fan of how they do business. And I'm not a big fan of how they estimate their rental income. Airbnb and VRBO do have tools where you can log in and type in property addresses, and they will give you information. But the two websites that I like, and Tracy, to answer your question, I mean, Vacasa is the answer to your question, but I'm not a big fan of Vacasa. I'm a big fan of AirDNA, and I'm a big fan of PriceLabs. And these are not typos. It is airdna.co and pricelabs.co. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up an actual website here. I think I'm sharing the screen and not the window. Let me close that down. Can everybody see my Google page right now? Do you see Google? Okay, wonderful. So we did it right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up airdna.co. Now, I've been on AirDNA enough that I think they've blacklisted me until I actually pay for their data, but you can sign up for AirDNA and you can get some rental projections. And the only thing I ever use AirDNA for is free. I'm going to try this just to see if you just type in a, well, darn, let me think for a second. As my computer is freaking out. All right, let's try this. But if I just type in Gulf Shores, Alabama here, I'm not sure exactly what data it'll give me. But if you will log in to AirDNA, and you can set up an account, it sets up for free, okay? You can see over here on the left-hand side, they've got all these, and it's freaking out. Here we go. They have everything over here that is locked. You see these little locks, but the Rentalizer tool right here, see how this tool is unlocked? You can use the Rentalizer for free. Now, again, I've ran enough numbers where I think I'm blacklisted on it. But for instance, I own a property at 401 East Beach Boulevard in Gulf Shores. And if I run those numbers, yes, see, it blacks me out. So I can't do it, but you can run it and it'll give you a projection. Now, fortunately, I've got it set up on my slides. I don't actually pay for AirDNA data. I pay for PriceLabs data. So I'm going to pull that up for you here in a second and show you how I read it. But the way it'll work, because I did grab screenshots the last time this worked. Now, this time I was actually looking at a property several months ago. I was looking at purchasing a property in Gulfport, Mississippi. So you type it in, you click the Rentalizer link here. Then you can type any address in the Rentalizer link, okay? So this was a property I was looking at. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath property, and it was giving me an actual annual revenue projection, okay, of $43,000 for this specific property. You can also go through, one thing I like about AirDNA is these little drop-down boxes here. You can adjust those boxes. So if it pulls in and it thinks it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit, but it's actually a 3-bedroom, 3-bath unit, and you can actually sleep 8 guests, well, you can adjust that information, click update, and it will update the expected annual revenue, okay? So it is a good tool. It's a good starting tool. I don't really, it's not very specific. It certainly has its issues that I'm going to break down here in a couple slides, but it's a great starting point, okay? And it's not only is it a great starting point, it's very, very free, at least initially for you. It'll be free. So the pros with AirDNA is that the information they give you is free as long as you sign up to create an account with their website. It is easy to use the website, and you can customize the number of beds and baths and number of people it sleeps to get better numbers. The problem with AirDNA is that it just uses a very simple average for the rentalizer, okay? So it's just looking at other short-term rentals in the area, averaging it and giving you a number. We don't know how well those properties are being managed. We don't know, you know, are those properties being offered for half the year, part of the year, most of the year? It's just a simple average with the numbers. If you want to pay for AirDNA, I've done it once. I don't pay for it currently and don't plan on paying for it. It is quite expensive. I want to say to buy one market or one zip code, it's about $100 a month. And it has, once you pay for it, it has an unbelievable amount of data, but there's so much data in AirDNA that I felt like it was overwhelming and clunky, and it was just really hard to get helpful information from the website, in my opinion, because, you know, breaking down the difference between revenue units could bring in if there was or wasn't central air, well, that's, I guess, interesting since the data is there, but I don't plan on buying anything that doesn't have AC. You know what I mean? Like it seemed like it was just a whole bunch of data that you had to sift through that really wasn't necessary. So, but it is a great starting point. And my current rule is, and what I will do is I'll go incognito on my browser and create a fake email or whatever, and actually get some AirDNA projections if I have something I'm looking at purchasing right now. But my current rule of thumb is if AirDNA doesn't project at least 1% of the sales price, then I'm out. Okay. So that means if I'm looking at a property that's $500,000, AirDNA's got to show me $50,000 or more in revenue for that to be something that I'm going to take the next step on. Okay. Now you can come up with your own rules, and there may be reasons, and that's rules certainly not perfect, but that's certainly a number that I look at, or at least start with, before I'm going to move forward on a property. Also, guys, if you log on to my YouTube channel, I've got a YouTube video out there. I'm not going to play it for you now, but it's called Is AirDNA Accurate? And it's just a video I went through and broke down the AirDNA projections on a property that I actually own versus my numbers that I've actually done on that property. And that is, it's a little bit more of a breakdown and explains where some of the flaws and hiccups come in to play when you're using AirDNA. Okay. What percentage do I look for as a goal? Tracy, good question. So like I said, I start with 1% on AirDNA. If it exceeds that, then I go to the next step, and I'll show you what that next step is. Okay, so the next step is Price Labs, and I actually do pay for this data, so I'll be able to pull this up for you. So again, it's pricelabs.co, not .com. And what I do here in Price Labs, so they've got some other tools here that I'll use as well, and we'll get into later in the class. But if you go to the market dashboard section, and you can see these are different dashboards that I've used and purchased over the couple of years that I've been on this platform. But the one I currently subscribe to, because I have been looking at a property in Pensacola, Florida, which is right up the street from Orange Beach, Alabama. So we can pull up the dashboard here. And it takes a minute to load because it is loading in quite a bit of data. Now, I don't use the revenue projections on Price Labs, but what I do is I take the filters over here. So I was looking at buying a 3-bedroom condo, and I apply because I want to compare that to other 3-bedroom units. Okay. So I've already gotten more specific, and I think the data that I'm getting is going to be more relevant for my listing, right? So the first thing that I really, really like about Price Labs is you have this heat map right here, okay? The heat map's not perfect, and I actually have another dashboard that I'll log into and show you that'll illustrate the point a little bit better. But why I like this heat map is because you can see the red are properties that are listed for and renting out for more money than the properties that are gray or green. Okay. And this will show you if there's pockets or there's areas. See, one of the issues I have with AirDNA, and you can look here at this heat map and see, as we get closer, and guys, I know this is just their color system they use, so I apologize, it's not perfectly clear. But as we get closer here to the Alabama line, and just because I happen to know this area, there's more to do and there's more built up, and just in general, I think more, what do you call it, like touristy attractions in Orange Beach and on the Alabama side of the beach than there is in Perdido Key going into Pensacola. Okay. And if you look at this heat map, what you kind of see is I've got spots, but more of the red and gray is highlighted and grouped over here near the Alabama line, versus as I get further away from this line, it gets green. Do you see that? So that would tell me, if I'm looking at buying a property further up the beach in Perdido Key, it doesn't mean I can't do a good job managing it and make some money with it, but I would say the overall possibility of maximum income buying in this area here is going to be probably lower than purchasing in this area here. Now, there may be more to that, right? These condos may be newer and nicer and they just rent out better. But remember, everything here on my screen, these are all 3-bedroom properties. And then I can even be more specific with the filters. So something I like to add when I'm looking at it is I like to add this column and this column. Close that out. So now I can filter specifically by condos. So I'm only looking at condos. I'm not looking at houses, to, again, try to get the data even more specific to what I'm actually buying that would be comparable. So now I'm looking at only 3-bedroom condos. And then I can click this button. And while it's not perfect, Price Labs will estimate the annual revenue that these 3-bedroom condos have been bringing in over the last year. Okay. So if you see these numbers right here, there's a 3-bedroom condo that they're estimating did over $90,000 in revenue as a short-term rental in the last 365 days. Then we have data points here of 87, 81, 80, quite a few pages of that are doing 70,000. Okay. Then if I want to see, so let's say I'm looking at property and it's, I don't know, 123 Beach Street or whatever. Obviously I can see that condo. I can see what it looks like. I can see how it's decorated or how I would plan on decorating it. Then I can click on these links and actually see the Airbnb listing of the condo that is bringing in over 90 grand a year. Okay. And I can look at that and say, okay, is that property comparable, or is that property not comparable to what I'm buying? And actually what I like to do is I like to try to find the highest revenue unit, the highest revenue producing unit for a condo. I like to find it in the same building that I'm actually buying in. Makes sense? So if I'm buying a condo, or if there's a condo for sale in this building, then I'm going to compare and try to make my numbers the same as or better than other people that are making similar numbers in that building. Does that make sense? So I really like this tool and I really like this data because I'm not dependent on what some management company is telling me that may or not be using some of the strategies that I'm going to show you. I'm not depending on what the current owner did or anything like that. I'm looking at actual data of what the software says that other units and other condos in the area are bringing in. And then I use that to set my goals and expectations. And I know it's also really helpful too, where say I've got a friend of mine that I showed him this tool and he owned a property that was bringing in about $60,000 a year. Well, he saw where other people in his same complex were bringing in $70,000 and $80,000 a year. So what that told him is maybe he was leaving money on the table and needed to get, wanted to get in, see how to optimize it or price it different or change up some different things to make the asset perform a little bit better. So I really, really like the data here and getting the specific numbers out of Price Labs. To pay for these market dashboards, guys, these dashboards here cost $10 a month. And I think your first dashboard is free when you sign up with Price Labs. By the way, I don't have any affiliate links to send out to you. I don't make any money telling you about these websites. It's just some tools that I've found that I've really liked and enjoyed as far as running numbers and figuring out how to get into this business and get some realistic projections for what a property can do. Okay, so let's see, anything else I want to hit on that? Those are the main things that I use the dashboard for. The other thing that I will do, let me pull this back up. I closed it. In addition to seeing where these condos are located, I'm also, something else I'll use this tool for, and we'll talk more about this here in a minute, is, let me filter it back out, excuse me. In addition to finding some of the top performing units, I'm also going to click around on these links when I'm doing research to try to find all the units available in the same complex that I'm in. Okay. And one of the things I'll check on, so let's say here that I happen to click on a Perdido Towers East 801 unit. If I happen to be looking at a unit or finding a unit in Perdido Towers East, and I see 4 or 5 of them, and this one right here, oh, it filtered it all out. I shouldn't have closed that window. I apologize. But see, this particular unit at Perdido Towers East, it's estimating it did about $61,000 last year. But if I find other condos in that same building that are doing $70,000 and $80,000 a year, well, it's the same condo. It probably sleeps the same number of people. I imagine it's similar square footage in the same building. Then I start looking at things to see, like, well, what is this person doing to advertise their property? And the properties that do more, does their listing look better? Do their pictures look better? I do have a fundamental problem with this listing, and we're going to talk more about that when we talk about advertising. But there's, lots of data that you can get, I think, from seeing these revenue numbers. Another example, and again, guys, we're not going to go through and break down this entire market, but let's say, for example, this property right here that did $55,000 is in the same building where another property in that same building did $70,000. Let's just assume that, and you will find scenarios like that as you go through the data. This person doing 55,000 might be a good person if we can do the research and figure out the property address and figure out who the owner is to see if they would sign a long-term lease with me, right? And maybe I guarantee them the $4 or $5 grand a month or whatever it would take to rent out that condo, and then me short-term rent it and use some strategies and bring in this number and then bring in the difference as profit. Does that make sense when we're talking about the rent arbitrage play? So data is helpful. Data is your friend. And I really like the data that I pull from Price Labs. I also like that they're not giving me gobs and gobs of data. Does that make sense? It's pulling in data that I think is valid, that's important, number of bedrooms, number of reviews, how many people does it sleep, stuff like that. Basic data, but very helpful data. For $10 a month, I think it's very, very worth it. And I kind of have a rule of thumb. If I find something that can help bring me some money, if it's less than about $50 a month, I consider that free. Okay, so that's kind of my rule of thumb on that. But I do like the data and filtering out the data, and I do like the heat map that you get in Price Labs. So I'm a big fan of their website. Looks like we have a question here. Lisa, you asked, is the tax burden higher? I guess we mean tax burden higher on like a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. And there's a couple ways to answer that, but I'll show you some numbers here in a minute and breaks out like different taxes and costs. But I consider all taxes a burden personally. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you're making money, Uncle Sam's going to want his cut. And then, guys, I've definitely seen some questions and people, again, having some technical issues. Someone else goes through this chat log, and they'll assign the CE credit accordingly. So just, again, be sure to sign in, say the information, all that, and we'll get record of it. And then the lady that goes through and audits this will be in touch with you if she has questions. Okay. But that's not something I can really help with or answer on the fly. All right. So moving along here, let me pull back up the slides, and we'll start this from the current slide. And what the slides, guys, oh, and I didn't mention this earlier, but I will send a link out to you where you have access to these slides. Again, just shows the process we just went through. When it comes to price labs, I love that we get listing specific data, and it even can become address specific. Like we can see actually where these properties are. It's very cheap. The problem with the website is you can tell versus looking at AirDNA, it's not real pretty. It's kind of, the colors aren't great, and it's not presented in the best manner, in my opinion, but I do think it is helpful. Also, if you run too many filters at the same time, you'll get some errors in the site. So it's not perfect, but overall, I'm a big fan of price labs and a big fan of the data we get from it to figure out which specific property we want to buy. Okay. Some other intangible things, goals for personal use. So the first condo that I ever bought, I've got 3 boys, as you know, and there was the fact that we wanted to use the property personally. Well, there was a condo we really actually liked better than the one we ended up buying, but the one we liked better was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The one we purchased was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And obviously the 3-bedroom, 2-bath just fit our family better, even though we felt like the unit wasn't quite as nice. But because we had that goal and that part of the process for picking out a property was personal use, that's part of selecting a property, right? Also be aware of things when you're buying in these markets, things such as permits and licenses. And I believe, Lisa, that gets back to one of your questions. There are specific licenses and things like that you have to buy to operate short-term rentals in these markets. Not terribly expensive in Orange Beach. I want to say the last one that I bought, the annual license was like $150. If you're buying next to a lake or next to the ocean, there may or probably will be flood insurance. That's not something we see a whole lot of in the metro Atlanta area. So just things like that. And then finally, because it bears repeating, let's hit on local government support. Again, be sure that you're not buying a property thinking you're buying a short-term rental business, and then the government comes in 6 months or a year later and shuts down that business. The licenses, so the main licensing that you need to operate this, pretty much every local municipality is going to have a short-term rental license or an operating license. And the agents can help you with that. Again, in these markets that you're buying in, that I'm a big fan of buying in, it's very common and people will know that process. It's just a matter of applying for it online, and it's pretty simple. And with Alabama, it's through the City of Orange Beach Department of Revenue. There's links online. You could probably Google it right now and find it. It's not hard to do. They don't make it real hard for you to give them money. Okay, like they're pretty big fans of receiving it. So it's not hard to find and not hard to get into. All right. But that's my spiel on selecting a property and how to estimate the revenue, because obviously you want to pick a property that's going to bring in, high amounts of revenue. No, you do not need a real estate license to get a short-term rental operation license. No, ma'am. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? How we estimate the revenue and some of the tools that I showed you, just anything at all before we move on to the next part of this class? Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. All right. So now we've talked about, okay, we have an idea or game plan, how we plan on buying a property or acquiring the property and getting into it. We have some tools and websites and things that we can do to select not only a market, but select a property based off the revenue we think we can bring in. And hopefully now we have a pretty good projection of the revenue that we expect to bring in versus what other similar units in our area are bringing in. So now the question becomes, okay, we know how we're going to acquire it. We've picked the property. So we buy the property, and now what, right? Well, the first step, in my opinion, is to get that property listed and market it and get it advertised that you have a short-term rental available for people to list. So when it comes to advertising your short-term rental, the first place you have to put your listing, in my opinion, is Airbnb. Okay. I can tell you from personal experience, about 60, depending on the property, somewhere between 65 and 75% of all my bookings come from Airbnb. They're definitely the bigger player, the more nimbler company in this space. VRBO has been around longer than Airbnb. I don't think they'll tell you this out loud or put it in any of their reports, but I personally think they are losing market share pretty rapidly to Airbnb. And this just isn't my data, guys. I've gotten my little brother has bought a couple of these. Some friends of mine have bought one, bought a couple actually. My sister-in-law, after I showed her some of my numbers, they bought one. I've got some real estate agent friends that have all purchased. And consistently, we all agree it's somewhere between 3 and 4 to 1. We'll get 3 or 4 Airbnb bookings before we get VRBO bookings. And yes, I agree. Airbnb needs more competition. I actually wish VRBO would kind of up their game a little bit and make it a little bit better platform for people to use. But if you're going to get in the space, you've got to get on the Airbnb. You've got to get there first. Okay. VRBO, while it's not as popular as Airbnb, at least for any of the things that I have, it still is very popular. And I think if you're not on VRBO, you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. So 1 and 2, Airbnb, VRBO, got to be on those websites, got to be advertising on both of them. The third thing, once we're on those websites, I do recommend setting up a direct booking website. That's really good as a way to send that link to like friends and family, post it on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. Because when people book through your direct booking website, you don't have near the fees or commissions that you have to pay to Airbnb and VRBO. And in case you didn't know, yes, when you go and book a property on Airbnb as a customer, you pay an Airbnb fee. What you may not know is the owner of that Airbnb that you're renting, they also pay a fee to Airbnb. So Airbnb dips on both sides, as does VRBO. So the total amount ends up being somewhere around 14 to 15% that they make per booking. Okay. So you can save that 14 to 15% by having a direct website set up where people can book directly on a website that you have. And I'll show you how I run this and manage it. I am not a website administrator or master by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have some tools and tricks that I'll show you here to show you how to do that. Once you're on those 3, I really haven't personally had a lot of success with any of the other websites. If you want to list on them, I think any advertising is good. But the websites like TripAdvisor or Booking.com and just all those places that your property can go, that's fine. I went through the trouble of setting up one of my properties on all of them. It's on TripAdvisor and Booking and everything else that's out there. And I've not only have I not gotten a booking from those websites, I've never even gotten so much as an inquiry or a question from any of those websites. So I'm not a big fan of it. If you want to be on those websites, great. I certainly wouldn't tell you not to advertise it, but just know that the hierarchy is Airbnb, then VRBO, then your direct website. Okay. So that's step 1 to this. Some common mistakes that I see in advertising. It blows my mind. And guys, y'all are real estate agents, so you're probably going to be better at this than me. But the main impression people get from the property that's listed are the photos. I don't understand why people have dark, terrible photos on their Airbnb listings, but I see it all the time. I do not like repeated photos, and I actually left that up as an example on that property that I pulled up. So this one right here, guys, if you look at these pictures, so when you look for a property on Airbnb, the first 5 photos that you have on your listing are the 5 photos that are going to show up on a computer. Okay. The problem that I have with this listing is you basically have the exact same photo 5 times. See that? I think a lot of people look at a listing, they say, hey, do I want to have vacation at this property? And like, oh, that's where I'll watch TV. That's the room I'll watch TV. That's the room I'll watch TV. Oh, that's where I'll sit when I watch TV. That's what it's the same photo 5 times. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that makes sense. Most people are not going to take the trouble. If they see that, they can't see it. I don't like that. Don't like the furniture, whatever. I will give them this. They do have good lighting in these photos. and they are very clear. I think they do capture the view and the beach. It looks like a very pretty listing, but I'm just not a fan of how this property is advertised. To give you an idea of how I do it on mine, and I'm hope this is right because I haven't audited my Airbnb listings here in a minute, but let me pull up one of mine real quick. So if we preview it, this is what my listing looks like on Airbnb. And what I try to do is I show you, okay, this is where the beach is. This is the pool with the amenities. This is where you cook food. This is where you sleep. This is where you'll see a view. Makes sense? So now a lot of people don't like doing this because psychologically, when you're uploading the photos into Airbnb, you think, oh, it needs to be in order of how I walk through the unit. So I'm going to put all my living room pictures, all my bedroom pictures, all of my amenity pictures together. I don't think that's right. I think what you want to do is you want to put the top highlights of why you think people would want to stay at your unit as your top pictures. And you only get one photo per thing that you like. Because even so, you've got people that are going to look at a property here on a website. You also have people that are going to pull it up on their phone. Now your phone is only going to show one photo at a time. Make sense? And most people will scroll through the first 2 or 3, maybe 4 photos, but they might not even make it to the 5th photo. Make sense? But I certainly think that you've got to make the best impression possible. The things that you love about your property, the things that you think, wow, this is why I would want to go on vacation here, that needs to be highlighted and accented on the first 5 to 6 photos of your listing. Make sense? And thanks for all the kind words, guys. I appreciate it. So I'm a big fan of not repeating photos. And I'm also, the one complaint that I would give myself for this listing right now, if I was auditing it, is I like to have a little bit of different colors in the photos. And what I mean by that is this photo here of the beach access, the living area, and the bedroom, it's kind of just for how bright they are. And it was a bright day when we took these pictures, but they're kind of like washed out with sky colors. This one, we have a little bit different colors because we're catching the kitchen. And obviously this one's more blue than it is light. If I had a better picture that was maybe a little darker, but still a good picture that maybe accented a different color, I think that would be helpful. But overall, I'm pretty happy with these pictures and I'm pretty happy with how this property is performing. So, but just that's kind of my thoughts or eyes on that. I'm not a big fan of generic or static titles in the listing. One of the other ones, while we're making fun of that listing, let's just not making fun. While we're critiquing this listing, let's just keep going with, actually, you know what? I closed it out. Shoot. But anyway, was it this one? Now, this was the property I think that was bringing in about $90,000. And you can see here, I love these 5 photos on this picture, on this listing. I love they show you the living area, the beach access, the amenities, the building itself, the kitchen. I think this is a very well done listing. And I also kind of feel like this picture is more white. This one's more brown. This one's more of a building blue, more of a pool blue. I'm a big fan of this listing. You can see here in their title, they do a good job of grabbing a bunch of keywords that people are going to be interested in. Makes sense? They're not saying, stay with us, we would love to have you. They're using words like beachfront, ocean, view, pool. They use beach twice, dock, things like that. I think that's really, really smart. Overall, I think this is a very well done listing. It's titled well. The pictures are well done well. This is a good listing. You don't have to look real hard in Airbnb, and I'm going to, throw it out there and just see if we get a data point here that's not real good. But if I just click on a random listing here, that one's pretty good. I would say all these pictures are very white in that listing. If you saw that, just a lot of the same picture, same color over and over. Let's see if we can find one that's kind of bad. And people in general have upped their game with this. Not bad. Walkout access to docks and pool. They're using some keywords like docks and pool and stuff like that. I don't know if I would show people in my pictures because you're looking at other people in the unit and you want to see yourself in the unit. But anyway, just some thoughts, some little, pieces and nuggets, but really think through your advertising, because you don't have a lot of time with a client. If they look at your advertisement, they don't like it for some reason, they're just going to move on to the next one. I also see a lot of bad angles in pictures where people are showing angles. It's like no one would ever see the unit. They're not going to lay on the ground and look at your sofa from the ground up. So some things like that I'm just not a fan of. I always tell people with listing, professional photos, good write-ups, use all the blanks on Airbnb. They have all kinds of different things that you can fill in. I'm a big fan of using every blank that they have. And then I also tell agents I probably spent too much time on this already, because let's be honest, you're real estate agents, y'all market property for a living. You could probably teach me things about my properties, okay? But just know that this is critical. This is a big piece of getting these properties to cash flow and bring in top dollars. Is we've got to have good advertising on the property itself. We've already spoken about photo order, but the order of the photos is critical, and you'll want to preview your properties both on mobile and on desktops. And you also want to look at the properties not just on Airbnb, but also on VRBO. Make sense? So you want to audit these listings, make sure you're happy with it, make sure that you are presenting the highlights and the top qualities of what your property has to offer. Okay. In addition to the actual listing itself, there's some other things you can do. I'll give you some more creative ideas. And I personally don't do all of these guys. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have totally optimized or maximized the properties that I have. But for example, some standard CRM things. And yes, I do work right next to a train track here. So if y'all hear that in the background, I'm sorry. It's kind of distracting for me, so I'm gonna give it just a second to get on out of the way. There we go. My joke when I'm recording a video is I tell people, oh, that's the horn that we blow when we get a new Airbnb booking. So hopefully I've got a new booking that came through that I can show you. But anyway, moving along here. So you can incorporate some standard CRM, what we call, client relationship management tools and some database strategies. So you can build a list. And one of the ways I've seen to do this that I thought was really clever. Have you ever been to a hotel and the hotel, for you to use the Wi-Fi, you can't just use it. You see the Wi-Fi, but then you have to log in with your email address. Well, guess what? When they get that email address, now they can market to you via your email. And yes, when someone books my unit, I get the person who booked it email address, but I don't get the couple that's staying with them and the kids that are staying. I don't collect those email addresses, but I could potentially do it through people accessing Wi-Fi. Just one suggestion. Makes sense? Then you could potentially build that list and market through it with a standard email drip campaign. All right. I also think that we can create content for that list with things going on in the area. In Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, there's always something going on, whether it's a Mardi Gras parade or the Hangout Fest is coming up in May. Obviously, people know that the beach is always a draw in the summer, but there's events and concerts and new restaurants opening all the time, getting that information out and using that as an excuse to email people and be like, hey, come check it out. Oh, and stay at my listing while you're there. So I think there's big opportunity there. And I think that if you do that, you've got to be in the top 1% of people that would own and manage a short-term rental, because most owners are not taking time to do that. And like I said, I personally don't even take time to do that, even though I know it would probably be worth the effort and the time to do so. But just an idea there. And so the other thing that I want to show you that's kind of fun, or I think pretty interesting about advertising is, once we've got a good listing and we're happy with our pictures and we're happy with our write-up and we're marketing people and we're posting it on Facebook and getting traffic and all that, what you want to do is you want to monitor and optimize your search results. Okay. And what I recommend doing is hop on Airbnb or hop on VRBO and search for something that should cause your unit to come up. So for instance, if you have a 3-bedroom condo that sleeps 6 people, then open up Airbnb, and for some dates that you have available, plug in, you're going to Orange Beach and you've got 6 people going, and these are the dates you're going. And look at the listings that show up first on Airbnb and ask yourself the question, why is this listing on page 1? Now, you could do this every day and you know, try to see what's there and see what they're doing, and maybe tweak some things on your site and see if you can get your listing on page 1. Or you can use a tool. I'm a big fan of using software tools, as you'll see here very quickly as we get into more tools that I use. But I'm a big fan of this website called RankBreeze. So let me show you what RankBreeze is and how that works. So I can go to RankBreeze here and log in. While I'm pulling that up, to be in VRBO, does it have to be a full house? How about a small guest house? Vivian, I don't really know. I know Airbnb kind of made their mark on the market when they allowed people to book specific rooms in a property. For VRBO, I think it has to be a separate house, but I think a guest house would qualify. But once you put in the listing and explain it, they would tell you on their website pretty quick if that would work or not. So anyway, RankBreeze. So on this website, guys, what I've got is I've got several properties here that I keep up with. Some of it's properties of friends of mine that I keep an eye on, but also I've got my properties in here. So that property we were just looking at, Belle Soleil, where I showed you the pictures here. This is the Belle Soleil property. So I can pull this up in RankBreeze and I can see my actual search history listings here. Okay. So what I do, and I'll show you a few different things that happens here with it. But this is a history going all the way back to December. These are different number of guests, because obviously you're going to show up different in the search rankings if you're searching for 4 guests or 5 guests or 7 guests or whatever. And Belle Soleil will sleep up to 9, just so you know. So that's why it shuts off at 9. So this gives me an idea of the rankings and where I'm falling in my search rankings on the website. Now, the red lines here, these are changes that I've made to my listing that I'm tracking, okay? And the main thing that I adjust from time to time really is my pricing. And you can see here, or at least I can see, I'll show you this red line here, I adjusted my base price. And when I did, it looks like I fell down the search rankings. Do you see that? How everything just kind of shot down when I made that change? So what that tells me is that change, whatever I did, I might need to go back to the data point that I had before and try to get back up here where my search rankings were doing better and coming up and higher versus coming in so low down here. Because I can tell you right now, if you're on page 8 or 9 or 10 of Airbnb, you're probably not going to get many bookings, if any bookings at all. How many times have you scrolled through listings on Airbnb and gotten to page 8 or 9 or 10 before you've booked something? Does that make sense? So definitely not just being on Airbnb, but being at the top of Airbnb is where you want to be. I tell people all the time, it's kind of like a website. If you're not on Google, you're not really on the internet. But let's be honest, if you're not on the first or second page of Google, you're still probably not really even on the internet. So what I use RankBreeze for is, one, it gives me a data point of where I'm at. But then what I can do is if I make a change, like let's say I adjust my title or change the description or do something like that, I can go down here to my journal, click track a change, and I can type in whatever it is I did. So I can say, okay, change title to whatever, to, you know, add the keyword golf, right? Maybe we say something like it's golf or golf front unit or something like that, or enjoy the golf. So I can save that change and then see in a few days. And obviously, since I haven't actually done that, I'm not going to save that because I'm not going to mess up my journal, but I can then see how that change adjusts my search rankings over the next few days. So I really like that aspect of it. The other thing that I really like about this website is that I can see here. So this is like a matrix of where I'm falling in the search rankings. And you can see here that if I get an opening in my calendar, I do allow for one night stays. So March 14th to 15th is a one night stay, 18th to 19th is a one night stay, 25th to 26th is a one night stay. I don't have a 4-day opening available until April 10th through April 14th for this unit. Okay. Well, most people do not allow one night stays in their Airbnb properties. Okay. Because of that, my competition is much lower. And you can see here, I'm showing up as the first listing, or at least on page 1 for pretty much every guest count for a one night stay. Y'all see that? So I know for the one night stay space, I'm going to be at the top of the search rankings, but I'm not really looking for a bunch of one night stays. I'm looking for 4-night stays or longer, right? And this is where it gets kind of tricky. You can see here when I get out into April and into end of April, beginning of May, this is where for, people looking to stay the 21st through the 25th with 6 guests, I'm buried on page 5, right? And on this one search, it couldn't even find me. All right. So that's just, it's good data. I can kind of see where I'm showing up, what I need to do. But like say here, if I want to improve this search right here, like 5 guests, people staying April 21st through 25th, I'm on page 7. See that? Well, what I can do is I can click details here, and it will actually pull up. These are all the listings that are on page 1, listed 7th, 9th, 10th. When it ran the search, these were the listings that came up. And not only can I actually click on these links and see what those listings are, I can also see the average price for those stays. You see that? So the pricing here is a big piece of where you'll show up in the rankings. And right now, my average price, the 22nd through 25th, well, I can pull that up. Scroll over here. So April 21st to 25th, see, I'm at, between 300 down to 260. Let's call it what, 280 a night on average is where I'm at, 290, somewhere around there. But for this particular ranking, I'm competing against people whose average at 199 a night. So I know I'm more expensive, and that is why I'm going to be buried a little bit on the page rank. However, understand with Airbnb, just because you're necessarily the cheapest doesn't mean you'll be first. So I was working with my sister-in-law on their property, and she wasn't getting a lot of bookings, and she just kept cutting her price. And she was buried at the bottom of Airbnb search rankings. I went through and raised her price, and she moved up. Well, think about that for a minute. Why is that the case? Well, remember Airbnb, VRBO, they make a percentage of what people book, right? So they have an incentive to show people the highest price possible properties that they think people will actually book, right? If you're really cheap, well, yeah, people might book it, but they're not going to optimize their revenue if they just put the cheapest properties to the top of the list. Make sense? So trying to find that happy medium, trying to kind of beat their algorithm and still be towards the top rankings with as high a price as possible, but not so high they push you down. That's part of the game and part of advertising on their platforms. The other thing that I'll say about this is that tells you if you're looking to book a stay as cheap as possible and you're on Airbnb and VRBO, you may find cheaper properties buried in the bottom of the search rankings. So just be aware of that, because they don't want to show you the cheapest properties. They want you to spend obviously more money so they make more money. Make sense? So I'm a big fan of this website. As you can see, I use it all the time. I track all my changes, try to keep up with where I'm at. And if I notice, one thing I've realized is, this is probably, as far as day-to-day management goes, you can see when I'm updating this, all right, at March 2nd, March 6th, March 11th. I'm on this website probably 3 times a week. It takes me about 20 minutes with my 5 properties to see where I'm at in the search rankings, make a few adjustments, log it in the journal, then close it down and move on with the rest of my day. Okay. So from a day-to-day management and operation standpoint, this is the most labor intensive thing that I do, but I kind of like it because I have my thumb on the pulse of what's happening with my properties. And I would have told you, like, it's about time for me to make a change here on this property. I would have told you that I really haven't had a lot of bookings at this one here lately. And that's because I'm not showing up at the top of the search rankings. All right. So when I go and make an adjustment on this one, probably later today, what I'll probably do is just go through and lower my price a little bit. I may adjust the title. I'll make a note of it, save it, and then I'll come back in a few days and see how that change is done for me. All right. So let's see. Anything else we want to talk about as far as advertising? And again, the other thing I'll say on Rank Breeze, guys, real quick, is don't make full sale changes. So like, I know some people, they see, oh, my ranking went down, I need to totally start over, and they'll completely change their title, completely change their write-up, completely change their pricing. And they will do that literally every single day. Well, when you're always adjusting the system, what I've realized is Airbnb can't keep up with those changes. And I've had people do that when I've looked at their information, and they're always at the bottom. It's like, okay, figure out how you want to advertise it, and then we'll figure out where we want it to be in the search rankings. Make sense? So just know that, or be aware of it. I'm a big fan of making a change, let it sit for 3 days, 5 days, make another change. If you're happy with the results, let it sit a week, make another change, and then just monitor it and see what you can do to try to move up towards and stay at the top of the search rankings. All right. So that's my spiel on advertising these properties. Any questions on that? Everybody still with me, still enjoying the class, hopefully learning something? Hopefully it's been worth the price of admission so far. Good question, Terry. Yes, Rank Breeze cost so I pay for the subscription that is $10, or excuse me, 10 listings that I can track. Those 10 listings cost me $67 a month on Rank Breeze. They have another option that's cheaper where I think you can monitor 3 or 4 listings. And that's where most people obviously will start. And I want to say that one's like $23 a month or maybe $27 a month. But yeah, that it's, again, not very expensive. Remember my rule of thumb, it's about $50, maybe $100 a month or less, and it can make me some money. I consider that free. All right. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate it. When we're not in class with people and I can't see people's faces and see how they're responding it, I'm just sitting there hoping people aren't falling asleep. So I appreciate the kind words. What we'll do is let's go ahead and since we're about halfway through, let's take about a 10-minute break. So we'll come back somewhere around 11:42, and we'll go ahead and get into the rest of this and finish up the class. All right. So we'll take about 10 minutes. And I'll hang around here and answer any questions if people have anything. Back from the break. I think I saw some questions come across that I may have missed when I was going back through the chat. So hopefully everybody's back here. Valentina, you're right. That's actually an opportunity, I think. So you asked, I thought most of the Airbnbs are a minimum of 3 days. They are, and I'll show you how I manage my minimum stays and stuff like that here in the next section, in the next segment. But the way I see it is if I have an opportunity or an opening in my calendar with how people booked it, and there's like 2 nights that are back to back available or 1 night available, then I'll advertise it and see if someone wants to book it. And surprisingly, because I figured most of the time I wouldn't get a 1-night Airbnb booking. I figured most people would just go to a hotel for that. But I've absolutely gotten 1 and 2 night bookings, and that's absolutely helped my numbers and performance at some of the units I own. So Airbnb doesn't require that. They'll allow you to set whatever minimum that you want. Let's see here. Definitely better than half of the CE courses out there. Thank you, Lawleen. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. We haven't spoken in a while. I definitely see some names on here I recognize. So for those of you I've met before, it's good to talk with you again. If I haven't, well, hopefully we can talk again and meet again soon. Or meet soon, I should say. Let's see. Valentina, you asked, do I have my rental properties in an LLC or a trust fund? I do not. I have some thoughts on that we can hit on later, but I spoke with an attorney who I trust, and we talked through it all. And I felt like it made as much sense for me to own them in my personal name as it did in the LLC. I know some people disagree with that, but like I said, we can talk about that one off for sure. Let's see. Asking about recording, guys. So I know the meeting is being recorded, but I believe, it's up to Dana and Heidi. They're the ones that figure out which one they actually put on the YouTube site. But, hopefully you can find it there if they decide to post it. Iris, you asked about my own booking site. Yes, I'll show you the software I use that does that and how all that works when we get to that part of the class. So we're going to talk about pricing next, and we're going to talk about the day-to-day management. And when we get to the day-to-day management piece, that's the software that I use that also includes the booking site. So I'll show you that. Heather, love that you work with Reagan down there in Orange Beach. Thanks for the message. And of course, me and my wife, we love Reagan. So I'm glad you're on the class here. Let's see. So Amy, I think you asked about the other cities with limitations for STRs. I certainly don't know all the different restrictions and things that are out there. But that's definitely something just to research before you buy, or if again, I start with, if I'm looking for one, I start with kind of the AirDNA or kind of the broad market as to what I think I can get. But then as I drill down, if I see something I'm interested in, I'm going to ask some local agents that question and see what I can find out. David, I don't understand that question. Can you send me a copy of your deck, DECK? I mean, maybe, but I'm not really sure. Awesome. Definitely see some people logging back in and putting that information. We appreciate it. Danielle just updated her 5 pictures on the Airbnb. I love it. All right. Well, hopefully that works for you. Hopefully you see good results. If it fails, just pretend like everything I told you was, you didn't hear it and I was wrong, and go back. But like I said, I think that's pretty smart. Yes, David, definitely going to discuss management, cleaning, maintenance, all that fun stuff, kind of how I do that, how I manage it. We'll certainly get into all that. And then, like I said, I'm also going to show you specific numbers on mine and show you what we've been able to do. Robert, you asked our local hotel taxes that may apply. So yes, the hotel taxes and things like that do apply for Airbnb and VRBO stays, depending on where the property is at. So like, for example, I own a property that I short-term rent here in Carrollton, Georgia. And for that property, both Airbnb and VRBO, they collect and remit the hotel taxes for me. So that's not anything I have to mess with. In Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, it's a mixed bag. Airbnb collects and remits the taxes, but VRBO does not. VRBO, I have to tell it how much the taxes are. I have to collect them, and then I have to file a monthly tax return with the county and remit those taxes. It's not hard. It's like anything. Once you do it once, it's kind of a learning curve, but then you're like, oh, you just fill it in and send them a check, right? Or they actually do it through a credit card withdrawal. But yes, those do apply, and it's definitely something to make sure that we do. Lisa, great point. Yes, I have the best umbrella policy that money can buy for everything that I own. But yes, that's a good point. Let's see, the slide deck. Okay, yeah, guys, we'll get copies of these slides out to you for sure. So just know when I get the class information and all that, we'll get links out to you, and you can get the information there. Very good. All right, so I think I'm caught up on the chat box or chat now, and we'll go ahead and jump back in. Appreciate you guys completing the course information here and the evaluation. And I'm going to reshare my screen. All right, there's my background. Here's the slides. Oh, there we go. All right, so talked about advertising. So now something else I want to talk about is pricing the units. And you probably saw, if you were paying attention on the rank breeze thing, I showed you some dates I had available and how the pricing varied. The pricing was all over the place, but I want to talk to you about pricing, and let's think about just the hotel industry or other industries in general, right? Why do hotel rates vary? Why do flights vary? I think we all know that, you know, you might board a plane, and a Southwest plane that's headed to Orlando, and there's going to be, you know, 300 people on that flight, but some of those people paid $59 to be on that flight, and some of them paid $259 to be on that flight. And in case you haven't flown Southwest, there really isn't a first class. They're all just tickets. If you've got a unit available to rent, how much are you going to charge for December 15th versus December 25th? I think we all know that December 15th should be cheaper than December 25th, but how much cheaper? And how much demand really is there, say, if on my units that are beach condos? I mean, some people go to the beach for Christmas, but let's be honest, that's probably not where a bunch of people travel. A lot of people stay home to be with family at Christmas. So how do you adjust pricing for that? Seasonal demand, weekend versus weekdays. I think we all know that cabins up in the mountains, they probably can command a little bit more money and have a little bit are more desirable to visit when the leaves are changing in the fall versus other times of the year, right? So how do you adjust for that seasonal demand? What if there's an event going on in your area, and what if you don't know about it, right? Like, what if you don't know that there's a Mardi Gras parade in Gulf Shores, or Hangout Fest is coming in May in Gulf Shores? How do you catch that to maximize your profit? So there's a whole lot that goes into pricing, and I think there's a whole lot of mistakes that are made when we're pricing these things out. Okay, so something that I see a lot. So, you know, obviously your pricing is going to be in dollars per night. And something that I'll see not quite as frequently anymore, but I do see it from time to time, is I'll see a listing that's like this, where someone just says, okay, for my beach condo, let's say, I'm going to book it for $400 a night. Well, the problem with that is that in January and February and November, you know, in the middle of the, you know, winter and the slow season, no one's going to spend $400 a night to go to the beach. There's a whole bunch of people out there that are units available for rent, and there's not a whole lot of demand, and you're just not going to get that kind of price. But during June and July, you're probably going to be 100% booked, right? Because there's so much demand, and everybody wants to go to the beach in the summer when the sun's shining. It makes sense, right? So then we know that that's probably not the best strategy. So then I'll see people that do something like this. And obviously this is better, right? Okay, so my price is a little bit cheaper in January through about March, let's say. Then I raise the price and collect a little bit more money for April and May and June and July when it's warmer and the sun's out, spring and the summer, and then we drop it again. Well, that's better. We're going to make more money probably with that strategy. But the problem is demand, the actual demand for your particular unit, no matter where you're at, it's going to look something like this. Make sense? Like, it's going to be all over the place, and we're going to know some of the reasons why we have high demand. And there's going to be times where we don't know why we have high demand. All right. However, now you could do it. You could try to keep up with what's going on down there and what people are paying, and maybe look at competitors and what they're charging and seeing if they got bookings and adjust your price. Like, you could do it. Or if you haven't learned this about me yet, you can use software, you can use a tool to help you, right? So finding and using pricing software, guys, this absolutely revolutionized my STR business and kind of opened my eyes and my mind of what was available. So the two big websites that are out there that I'm familiar with that offer this are beyondpricing.com and pricelabs.com. Okay. And I'm going to show you my actual PriceLabs account. Beyond Pricing, I used to use Beyond Pricing. I switched everything to PriceLabs just because I felt like PriceLabs was, I could customize my settings a little bit more and make it a little bit more specific like I wanted it on PriceLabs. But something I want you to know, and there's data out there that backs this up, but Airbnb will tell you that the average person, the average stay that they get or booking that they get on their website are people looking to travel within usually 30 to 60 days. I think that lag time has increased from when I created the slide. Back then, it was more around 30 days when people were looking to book. So what that tells me is if you have a property, or if I have a property, or if you have an investor that has a property, and it is 100% booked more than 60 or 90 days out, then we probably offered it too cheap and we left money on the table. I know management companies down there in the Orange Beach Gulf Shores area right now that they will wave like a banner, like a flag about how great they do business. And they'll say things like, well, we're already 99% booked for the summer months. You know, the demand down here is great, and we're already 99% booked for these months. Well, the objective here is not to get 100% occupancy. It's to maximize revenue, okay? And to maximize revenue on these units, you have to be comfortable having dates that haven't booked coming up on your calendar. And you even have to be comfortable having dates that don't book on your calendar. Make sense? It's just part of the game. It's part of the strategy. Obviously, in a perfect world, we would book every single day on the calendar at the max number available to us. But realistically, that's not going to happen. For me personally, I would rather be a little bit more expensive and have less occupancy than be a little bit less expensive with higher occupancy, because there's a place there where we're going to make the same revenue, but with more occupancy, that means more people being in my unit. That's more wear and tear on the furniture and the AC system and the fridge and everything else. Make sense? So having, you know, availability and having availability within the upcoming days is really important, and I think a really good sign of a healthy pricing strategy on these units. Okay. So, and, you know, the next thing is just going to be actually pulling up these websites. So let me show you how this works. I feel like I lost some slides here, but that's all right. All right. So let me close out some of these windows. We've already pointed out some good listings and poked at some of the other listings. I've showed you dashboards on Price Labs, and we've done there. All right. So let's go over here to the dynamic pricing side here of Price Labs. Okay. I'm going to pull up my pricing dashboard. And this right here, so these are my 5 short-term rentals that I own. I own a condo at Blue Water. I own 2 condos at Seawind and Gulf Shores. And then the one I've showed you a couple of times is Belle Soleil. And then I also own a house off Lake Carroll here in Carrollton. All right. So the first thing that I want to show you that this website does is it shows you right here. And I've got kind of a good and a bad example here. So the first thing, guys, let me just show you this for the Lake Carroll property. This property is more of a true second home. It's really close to where I live. It's the closest lake that I could find that was big enough that I could still put a boat and a jet ski in it. So that one operates more as a second home, and we just kind of rent it out as it's available. We have a minimum price. If you don't want to pay it, that's fine. Don't stay there. So it makes some money. It'll cover the mortgage payment pretty much, but I'm not looking to maximize or optimize profit on this particular property. All right. So just know that. So when I'm looking at numbers here, you'll see here it's like, wow, you only have 7% bookings or 7% occupied for the next 90 days. I'm not trying to squeeze every dollar out of this particular property, just so where you know. Okay. But for instance, Blue Water here, this unit. So for the next 7 days, I'm outperforming the market. You see that? I'm at 58% booked versus 44%. For the next 30 days, I'm 84% booked, where the market's only 40% booked. And for the next 90 days, I'm 62% booked, where the market's only 27% booked. All right. So I've probably been too cheap at Blue Water. So the way this site works is they're saying, okay, red is low, you're underperforming the market. So that's a problem. Green is good. That means you're right at or just above where the market's at. And then blue is bad. Blue means that you've got bookings and that's good, but you're outpacing the market faster than we think you should be outpacing the market. Makes sense. So possibly leaving money on the table and need to raise prices. And these numbers right here for CWIN, for whatever reason, guys, this property got stuck on page 1 of Airbnb. I'm not complaining, but it just, booked up. And you can see I'm 97% booked for the next 30 days. So between now and April 14th, I think I have 1 vacant day that's coming up here in the next 7 days. That's why this number's 86%. So that's the first thing you can see. We track and see what our occupancy is for the next week, the next month, and the next 3 months. All right. Then I can click inside the actual property. So I'll show you blue water here for this one. So the gray numbers that you see here, I know it's really hard to see on your screen probably, but the gray are dates that have already booked. The green right here are dates that haven't booked yet. Okay. And I can certainly take my calendar over. So you can see I'm mostly booked for April, don't have a lot of availability there. The calendar opens up a little bit in May, but that's okay. I've got plenty of days left to book these dates in May. It color codes it. This isn't like anything special. The darker the blue, it just means they're reading higher demand on these days. And the lighter green or whatever, it just means lower demand. They just want to color code it for you. Don't really understand why they feel it necessary to do that, but that's fine. But you can see here, these are the prices that are actually advertised on this unit right now. Now, say for instance, on RankBreeze, I'll pull that back up and show you how I actually do this. We'll do this live. So let me go to my blue water unit, which is this one right here. All right. And you can see here that I've changed my prices quite a bit here lately on this one. I actually had a typo in there, so I had to go through and fix it. And that's why it changed more recently than I normally do. But this most recent price change kind of filtered through the system and it didn't really change a whole lot of anything. But overall, I would tell you at Blue Water, I'm outperforming the market. Makes sense? I'm higher than where it's saying I should be market-wise for my bookings. So what I'm going to do to just change something up in this listing, I'm going to go here to my base price and I'm going to raise it a little bit. So I'm going to go from a base price of $355 to say $365. Okay. What I do is I click save and refresh. And this is a great fail safe right here to make sure you don't mess up something. Like one time I accidentally changed it to where like my maximum price was like 300. And of course it had knocked all the prices down at all my units or all my days. So I fixed that, but save and refresh doesn't push anything out to the websites. It's just so where I can see where my pricing is at. And now since I've raised the price, whatever that is, about 3 or 4%, it's gone through and adjusted all my prices 3 or 4% for every day that's open on my calendar. Then I hit sync now, and that's going to automatically send from Price Labs. It sends it out to all of where this current property is listed. Okay. And this is the one that I have listed everywhere. So now my pricing has changed on Airbnb. It's changed on VRBO. It's changed on my direct booking website, on TripAdvisor, all that stuff. All my pricing just got updated. Make sense? And then because I want to track that, I'm going to go to RankBreeze. I'm going to click track a change. And then I've got kind of the shorthand that I use. So I'm going to say base price 365. Make sense? So I save that. And now tomorrow, it won't be here now because it's on this far right-hand side of the graph here, but tomorrow there'll be another red line here where I can see that changed. And then I can see the results of that change and what I want to do. But you can see, we've done pretty good about staying at the top of the search rankings here at Blue Water. It's only recently that it started to fall off and kind of gone all over the place. But I can adjust pricing here through this website, and all I have to do is change the base price. It's on Price Labs to figure out the demand and the demand for occupancy and what other listings are doing and adjust my price accordingly. Okay. And let me show you this. I'll give you one other example that I thought was really cool. And it was actually how I found out that this even existed. Is this the one? Let me look. And maybe the other one. I own 2 CWIN condos, so I get them mixed up sometimes. Okay. So this is the one. So you can see here for this CWIN condo, I've got 1 day left in March. I've got 2 days left in April. This day out here is actually in May, but then I get to May and it opens up. I'm thrilled with this. I'm not upset about it. I probably left a little bit of money on the table because I did book up April pretty quickly, but that's okay. Something though I want to show you is if you look here on the screen, you can see these little moons. You see that? And there's like the number 1, the number 2, the number 3. So what this software also does for me is not only does it dynamically adjust the pricing per day of my unit, it also adjusts the minimum stay. Okay. So the way my software is set up now is, say a couple weeks out, 3 weeks out, you're allowed to book. If I've got openings for it, you can book a 2-night stay during the week. But if you want to book a weekend, if you want to book Friday or Saturday, you have to book a 3-night stay. Do you see that? And that's all built into the formulas here and the customizations that we did. Then as I get closer than that, once I get about a week out, you're allowed to book a 1-night stay at our unit. So the whole idea is to be able to, again, maximize revenue and get bookings. However, if you're looking to book out in the summer, the minimum night stays jump up to 4-night stays. You see that? So out here in June, we have 4-night stays out here. And then you can see the demand. The reason these numbers are higher or lower in June, it's based off Price Lab seeing what other units are booking for and also how many of those units have booked. Because you got to imagine if everybody has booked up every condo that's available in June and I'm the only one left, well, I want to be as high as possible. Makes sense? I want to be really, really expensive. I can always adjust these prices down as I get closer to June for dates that haven't booked. But guys, I can tell you at the beach, June and July, they book. The demand in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach for June and July is just unbelievable. And that's how you get prices like this. And the way I look at it is I've got a big piece of bait fishing for a big fish. That's what I have on my hook, and that's what I'm fishing for. I can always drop my price, but if someone books it, I can't really change it at that point. They've booked it, and it is what it is. The other thing that I want to show you here, and again, I don't have to know about this, and the website doesn't have to know about this. It just looks at demand. Look at these dates here in May. So you can see we're this weekend. Okay, it's a weekend in May. It's nice. Sun's coming out. It's $450 a night for a 3-bedroom condo. Drops down to $300 a night, Monday and Tuesday. But then we get to Thursday here and bam, it's this huge number, $900, $1,200, dollars a night, really? And you got to think about that. We're not to Memorial Day yet. This is the weekend before. Well, this weekend right here, guys, in Gulf Shores, this is the weekend of Hangout Fest. It's a big music festival. They always have a bunch of big bands down there. And the demand to stay near the Hangout is absolutely crazy. And by the way, Seawin, this condo right here, you can walk to the Hangout. You can walk to the festival and to the concerts that are out there. Now, I haven't booked it yet for this unit, but for my other Seawin unit that's within walking distance to the Hangout Festival, these days here are gray. You see that? So I booked this unit. Now, I had this one priced a little bit lower because it's not performing as well for whatever reason. But these days booked out for almost $1,000 a night for the Hangout Fest. Like I said, this one over here, I've got a bigger, piece of bait on the hook. Maybe it'll book, but remember, I can always drop my price as I get closer, where I'm still a couple months out from needing to book those dates. So, but the beauty of that is I didn't have to know there was a Hangout Fest. The software didn't have to know that there was a Hangout Fest. All we had to do is plug it into the system. The software sees the demand. The software sees what's changing out there in the marketplace, and it will adjust my prices up or down based off the demand that's happening and what they're seeing as far as bookings go. So my strategy is in the slow season, when there's more supply than there's demand, I want to be the cheapest unit available. And in the busy seasons and the busy weekends and the busy times where there's more people coming and more demand than there's ever going to be supply of units available, then I want to be the most expensive unit available comparatively. Make sense? And that's really kind of my strategy and how it works. But I love the software, one, that it adjusts my prices for demand. I love that I can click one button and it adjusts my price across all the different booking channels. And I love that I can go in and quickly see how I'm performing versus how the market is to get a sense for what I need to do with my prices as I'm adjusting things. Make sense? So really cool tool. And like I said, this is where my business and system went from, oh, I can make some money, maybe I can at least cover my mortgages, to kind of overdrive. And I was like, oh, wow, there really is a lot of profit and a lot of opportunity to be had owning short-term rentals. So any questions about that? So what we'll do now is we'll get in kind of the last piece of software that I use and kind of put all this together for you guys. So I've given you quite a few tools, right? Price Labs with a market dashboard, the dynamic pricing through Price Labs. We've talked about Rate Breeze. But the other piece of software that I use is my management tool. And the software that I use for that, it's called Hostify. So when it comes to property management, so the first thing is, I don't know why that says step 3B, guys. I've reorganized these slides and I guess I just didn't adjust that. I apologize. We'll get that corrected. When it comes to property management, you've got professional management companies in all these areas that you would be looking at buying in more than likely. Those companies are going to charge anywhere between 15 and 35%. I promise you, those professional management companies, I guarantee you they don't use Rate Breeze. I've ran into one guy that uses Price Labs, and that's because I showed it to him. Okay. Most management companies, they're there to make their life as easy as possible, and the way they make their money is by bringing on one more person. It's not a matter of optimizing the revenue of what they have. It's just having a system in place to somewhat manage it and then try to keep their headaches as minimal as possible. Okay. That is why. So another hint or tool here, when you're booking your next vacation, it is actually cheaper to stay in the summer in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach for 7 days than it is for 5 or 6 days. Okay. And the reason for that is there's so many management companies that require a 7-day minimum in the summer. And the reason they did, and if you think about it, it made sense back in the 1980s to do that because, you didn't have the internet. People would call on the phone and when is this condo available, or when do you have availability? And they couldn't say, oh, well, this condo, it's these days, but then I've got this booking. So you've got this window of 3, like they couldn't do that. So they would just say, okay, the week of July 8th is available, or the week of June 12th is available. Make sense? But now with software tools and things like that, there's really no reason to have 7-day minimums, but that's something that's just stuck with the vacation industry over the years. And it makes it to where you have way more competition for a 7-night stay than you do for a 6 or a 5-night stay, because not as many people offer that. And as a result, I make more money by offering my unit for a 3 and 4 and 5-night stay than I would by offering it for a 7-night stay. It really is an inefficiency in the market. The self-management softwares, there's lots of property management softwares out there like Guesty and OwnerRez. I personally use Hostify. I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. From a management standpoint, I always recommend you should always be building a list of cleaners, handymen, contractors. I found there's lots of great resources on Facebook for that. Just join an Orange Beach or a Gulf Shores or a Blue Ridge, Georgia page and say, hey, does anybody have any recommendations for a cleaner or a handyman? You will get dozens of them. And then what we do, guys, when we go down, we audit them. So like when I go down to my unit, I don't tell my cleaner that I'm coming down. I just tell her that we have a booking. And then I walk in and see what I'm assuming my guest will see every time she cleans it. We have fired probably 3 or 4 cleaners. So we've been through some. That is critical. So you have to kind of, run this like a business and make sure you're happy with the service and the, guest experience you're providing people. But it's really not that hard. Most of these property management companies, they'll be like, well, if you want to be the person that has the answer the phone at 4 a.m., you go for it. I mean, let's be honest, guys. How many times have you woke up at your house where you had major emergency at 4 a.m. that you had to deal with right then? I'm willing to bet almost never. Like, it's really not that big a deal. It's not hard to deal with kind of the day-to-day routine maintenance stuff and things like that. The key is just to have a list. And I've got a list of contractors. And what I do is, if I have an issue, a door that won't lock, or, you know, a toilet that's messed up or whatever, I just start at the top of the list and call down until whoever can get out there the quickest. And I don't really care. And I don't tell the contractors this, but I don't really care if one of them's $75 and the other one's $175. It's, you know, in a perfect world, I'd only pay the $75, but it's all about having a list and really showing the customer. What I found is most clients and most guests, they are totally fine with being inconvenienced if they can see that you're actively working on it. And they understand, look, I get it. You know, you don't live here, you're calling, you're doing everything you can. And I've almost never had a bad review because of a maintenance issue or anything like that. Okay. So a couple questions here. Is it wise to manage the property ourselves? Absolutely. I don't think you can really optimize these properties unless you're managing it yourself. And I'm going to show you here with the software how you can do that and it not be a big deal. With Airbnb, you can use your own contractors. Absolutely. It's your property, so you can use whoever you want. David, I agree. 1 midnight call in 3 decades plus of managing properties. Yeah, it's just not, I'm not going to say it won't happen or it doesn't happen, but it's just not. I think sometimes the property management companies want to think they're more important and a bigger deal than they are. And I'm just personally, I've never found one for the money they charge to really be worth what they bring to the table. That's just me. So the software that, again, the only way to do this business is to be comfortable with and using a management software. The software that you use, in my opinion, it should automatically communicate with guests and with your housekeeper. Okay. It's got to be able to update and synchronize all your calendars between all your websites. I know people that do this. It doesn't make sense to me. The idea that if I got a booking on Airbnb, I immediately have to stop what I'm doing and log into VRBO and block those dates out is not sustainable. It's not logical, but some people do try to do that. The software does all that for me. The software synchronizes all my listing updates. So I can go into Hostify and update my title, and it'll update the title throughout all my websites. And then finally, the software you use, it needs to be able to scale, right? It needs to be a software you're comfortable with, where when you get the first property under your belt, if you want to build a business, what do we do to get the second property and the third property in there? So the flow chart, the way it works is Price Labs, which I've already showed you. We set the pricing and the minimum stays in Price Labs. Price Labs then talks to Hostify. So it sends all my pricing and everything to Hostify. And then Hostify spits out the listing with the pricing and the minimum stays through all the booking channels. Okay. So let me show you what Hostify looks like. I'm going to pull up that website. And guys, when we get into this is where you're going to start seeing some of my numbers and what's available. Please know, and I hope I've made this very clear, but in case I haven't, I don't in any way, shape, or form feel like I've fully optimized or unlocked all the potential of this market by any stretch of the imagination. But you will see some numbers on here that look pretty good. And I can tell you it's not a flex or anything like that. It's just, these are my numbers, and I've made a bunch of mistakes. Everything that I'm showing you, it's a mistake or something that I've made before. And I promise you, going through this class, you're going to be way ahead of me versus where I was at when I got into the game. Okay. So let's look at it real quick. All right, so this is Hostify. This is the number that I'm looking right now for my 5 properties that I'm bringing in March, either with people that have already stayed or will be staying. Now, this is deposited revenue, okay? So this is not, I might have to pay some taxes out of that. I certainly have to pay cleaners out of that, certainly have to pay mortgages and HOA dues out of that, okay? But that's kind of just a number that it gives. So that's my revenue for March. 29 reservations, the 5 listings, and I've gotten 29% reviewed so far. in the last 30 days, but all of those reviews have been 5-star reviews. So that's good. In the software itself, some tools and features that I really like. The first one is the multi-calendar. So this is a great way for me to quickly see a snapshot of what I have going on. Guys, do me a favor. If you happen to recognize some of these names and know some of these people, just pretend like you don't know them, or I promise it's not that Allison Warwell. Okay. It's a different Allison. So you can see right here for Blue Water, I've got 1 day available here. What I'll do when I have one vacant day, in addition to having this day available for rent on the website, is I'll reach out to this guest that's staying here and to the guest that's staying here. I'll reach out to this David guy and say, hey, would you like to get down and check in early? I can give you a discount if you would like to do that. Or I'll ask this guest if she would like to extend her stay. And if she does, then I'll give her that day as a discount just to try to fill up and maximize revenue, because, you know, the day's there. And, you know, chances are a Thursday in March is probably not going to book. Maybe it will, but it probably won't. Now, these days right here where I've got 4 days back to back, I'll probably get a booking there. The other thing my pricing software does is it does provide last minute discounts. So as I get closer to days that haven't booked, it's going to gradually start reducing this price to try to get a guest in there. And again, the whole game is to try to optimize that revenue. Okay. So it's a snapshot. I can see what's going on. This map right here, it doesn't look real good. I've got a lot of vacant days here at one of my C-Win units. What actually happened, guys, a couple of days ago, I had a real big cancellation. I think I had about, of these, whatever it is, about 14 days here, I think I had about an 8-night stay cancel last minute. So that's what opened my calendar up here. Otherwise, I think I would have a booking there already. And I do expect many or the majority of these days to book up. But I can see real quickly kind of what I've got going on at my properties if I have turn days and things like that. I really like the inbox here. The beauty of Hostify, since it talks, well, let me show you that first. So I'll show you the channel piece of it. Cancellations do or don't pay based off your cancellation policy, Lisa. So depending on how far out they booked and stuff like that, they will or won't. So these are all the websites that I can connect to and advertise my property. Right now, I'm only connected to Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com. Again, I've been on these other websites before, never even gotten so much as an inquiry. But the beauty of being connected on these channels is when a guest responds, or if a guest has a question or just wants to say thanks or whatever, all of those messages come to one inbox. So I don't have to remember if I need to talk to someone, well, were they an Airbnb booking or were they VRBO, or do I have to log into both websites to see how to talk to them? All of their responses are on this one place, and then I can respond to everybody. So like if I were to respond to this David guy right here, and I typed a message into him right now, the software is smart enough to send that message through whatever booking channel he booked through. Makes sense? So if he booked through Airbnb, it'll go to him through Airbnb, VRBO, the same thing. The other thing the software does is with the automation tool right here. Now, guys, this is going to look like very overwhelming, and I understand that. But remember, I've scaled up over time and I do have 5 properties. It's not hard to set this up, I promise. But this is where I've set up all my automated messaging, where certain tasks that happens when we get a new reservation, certain tasks happen at check-in time, certain tasks happen at checkout time, things of that nature. Okay. And the reason so like at a new accepted reservation, I automatically send an introductory message to the guests telling them thanks for booking. We look forward to hosting them. Also, Olga is the name of my cleaner right now. This is where I alert Olga via email and Olga via text that we have a new booking for our unit. Makes sense? So she can add that to her calendar, and that's automatic. I'm not tracking down Olga and saying, hey, do you have this booking, this booking? I think I may have missed. No, it happens automatically. And then if the guest changes something, right? If the reservation is canceled, if the reservation is altered, okay, if they alter their booking, Olga gets a text and an email saying what's changed. Olga gets a text and an email saying what's changed. Make sense? So literally, if I get a booking as we're sitting here now, and I actually checked my phone before and I didn't get one, which was unfortunate because I could show you what it looks like, but I will show you on another thing here in a minute. If I get a booking while I'm teaching this class or while I'm pre-qualifying a customer for a mortgage, if I get a booking while I'm asleep at night, that's how we started this whole class. If I get a booking, the cleaner immediately knows about the booking. The guest, let me show you what the guest experience looks like. And we'll take this, this David guy as an example. That's fine. So David booked, you know what, this is not a great example. Let me pull up a different one for you. Let's try this one. I think she booked more. Yeah, this is good. All right. So this lady right here, Elena, she booked my unit for a stay from March 9th through March 14th on January 11th of this year at 6 o'clock. See that? All right. So she booked it here. The second she booked it, she got this message that said, "Hi, thanks so much for booking with us. We're looking forward to your stay. We'll be in contact closer to your arrival day with details. In the meantime, can you send me your email address and phone number?" The reason I asked for that is the software is smart enough when she puts her email address and phone number in it, the software grabs that information and attaches it to her contact. Okay. So right here, if I go to guest, this is a list of all the guests that have ever stayed with me. Now, there's going to be names in here of people who maybe asked a question but never booked and things like that. But you can see if they put their email address and phone number in here, the system is smart enough to grab it. And now I can strip all this information out and email or send on an email campaign or text campaign or whatever to my guest, okay, my former guest. So we asked for that, so where the system will grab it. And so where if there is a problem, we do have a quick way to get a hold of somebody. Then as we get closer, I send them a message verifying that their check-in dates and their checkout times and all that kind of stuff. I send them our condo rules that comes out automatically. I let them know at check-in time, we send the door codes and things of that nature. We send the Wi-Fi password. The day after check-in, we send this message that says, "I hope you've settled in all right and you're enjoying your stay. If there's any reason you can't give us a 5-star review, please let us know so we can correct it. Don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything you need or if we can assist in any way." So you can see here, she responded and said, "Everything's been great so far. We're loving it." Okay, that's awesome. But the beauty of this is, you know, and then here the day before checkout, we say, "Hey, tomorrow's checkout. We've sent checkout instructions. If you have any questions, let me know." But it's all done automatically. And what's awesome about it is one of the #1 responses I get in my reviews is, "Jay is so responsive and so informative for our stay." They don't know that it's not me texting them and sending out all these messages. Make sense? I've got it all set up. And what I realized is that the key to getting it right is seeing what questions you're getting over and over again. So like I've got one unit where I was always getting a question. People couldn't figure out how to unlock the door. So I included those instructions in the check-in instructions. That way, I mean, some people figured it out, but most of them wouldn't. Make sense? So, you know, I'm always optimizing, always looking at this. You know, I say always, about once a year, maybe once every 6 months, I'll try to think through what are some of the common questions that I'm getting. And then I'll go over here to my automations and adjust that and update that information to account for that. So we're hopefully I'm touching the guest and having to do stuff with them less and less. Make sense? Some other automations that I use that I think is really, really cool. Airbnb, they absolutely monitor how quickly you respond to inquiries from guests. Well, you can turn on this answering machine right here, and all the answering machine is, I've got a thing in there that says, "Thanks for your question," or "Thanks for reaching out. I'll be in touch soon." So no matter what anybody messages me, they instantly get a response. My response rate is always going to be 100%. Make sense? Auto reviews, this is great. As long as the guest was good and we didn't have any problems, I don't have to do anything. The software will automatically submit that guest a 5-star review I think I've got it set up to go out about 3 or 4 days after their checkout time. If I had an issue or problem with the guest, then I can log in and turn that off and actually leave more of a problematic or leave an issue with a review. So just really, really cool. Now, I don't use the pricing engine inside of Hostify. If you paid attention, you probably saw that RankBreeze also had pricing engines right here, pricing. I just don't like their systems. I don't think they do as good a job as Price Labs does. Some other questions that I get, Hostify, it cost me, there is a minimum because I have 5 properties there. It's $20 per property. So Hostify costs me $100 a month. Price Labs cost me $20 a month per listing. So that's also another $100 a month. And then I pay RankBreeze the $67 a month. So I'm at $267 a month total for all the tools and features and everything that I'm showing here, that I use. And then this software is designed, just so you guys know, it's designed to run like an entire management company. And that's why you've got housekeeping and task and other things like that. I don't actually use the software for that. So there is more, things that it will do versus what I use it for. But the software does talk natively under apps like here. So I've got it set up where it takes payments via PayPal on my direct booking site. I know I had a question on this. So Booking Engine, this is built into the Hostify software. And this is where my direct booking site comes from. The URL that I bought, and they'll walk you through this, guys. It's not hard. But if you go to Gulf Shores Orange Beach condo, you can tell I don't visit a lot because it's not popping up automatically. But yeah, Gulf Shores Orange Beach condo. Look, I know those people. That's me right there. So these are my condos that are available. You can type in your check-in, check-out date, number of guests, click search, it'll pull it all up. And again, since it's through the software, these calendars and pricing and all that updates, just like Airbnb and VRBO updates. Make sense? I didn't have to set all this up. I just literally turned on the engine and I gave it the URL and made I think I bought the URL through GoDaddy or something like that. And they gave me the step-by-step method on how to make it talk where it would pull up that website. But it was real easy. And yeah. So Hostify, between Price Labs and Hostify, that's the majority of kind of the day-to-day management, communicating with guests, communicating with cleaners. About the most that I deal with on a day-to-day basis is number one, going through RankBreeze and just seeing where I'm at price-wise and rankings and stuff like that. Like I said, I do that for maybe 20 minutes about every 3 or 4 days. And then the only other thing that I do is, we'll have a guest ask things like, hey, we're looking forward to coming down. What's your favorite seafood restaurant? Or do you have any recommendations for a family of 5 with 3 teenagers or something like that? And of course, we've been down to these areas. So we're like, hey, we love going riding golf carts or, whatever. But it's really, really simple. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. Setting up the software and the learning curve with the software is the biggest issue. But again, once you're in it, I promise you will be such a better property manager than any of your guests would be. Let's see. I think we've got some questions here. Access to recorded video. Vivian, I don't post that recording. Dana Sparks will be the one that does it on her YouTube channel. So just look out for a message from her. Let's see. I pay, Joseph, so I pay my cleaners per clean. So some of my units are bigger than others. So the most I pay is $170 to clean the unit. The least that I pay is $150 to clean one of my units. But the cleaning fee that I actually charge the guest more than covers that. Okay. So I don't actually try to make money on the cleaning fee, but I will charge the guest, say, like $165 instead of $150. And then any money that I supposedly make on that is money that I'll use to buy supplies and things like that when the cleaner needs stuff. So that's how that works. Anybody want to see some more numbers? So the other thing I really like about Hostify is it's a good question, Jenna. Do I use a linen service? No, I do not. We buy all of our linens, and we are, so from a guest experience standpoint, guys, you know, obviously I haven't hit on that a lot. I can tell you something that I do is I make sure every living room and bedroom that I have has a smart TV in it. Smart TVs are not expensive right now. We don't buy like the thickest, nicest linens only because it's really hard to turn that around and get stuff cleaned and dried in time. But we buy the nicest linens that we can buy that wash up quickly. Okay. I've been to Airbnbs. You've probably been to Airbnbs where I think I could dry off better with sandpaper than the towels they provide. And I think that's just a miserable experience, right? I try to, and you saw some of the numbers that I had on Price Labs and stuff like that. I try to make my unit as nice as possible, and then as a result, attract kind of the higher dollar clientele. The other thing that I found is the more expensive I rent my units out for, the less trouble that I have with the guest, with noise, with complaints and things like that. And overall, they seem to respect and do a better job of taking care of my unit and taking care of my stuff. So that's what's worked for me. But no, we tell our cleaner, look, if there's a smudge or a stain or anything, throw the bed sheet away. We're not going to, we're not going to get a bad review or have a complaint from a guest over a $4 towel. Okay. Let's see. Heather, you asked, any experience changing over platforms? I've only ever used Hostify. There's definitely a learning curve to it. I'm not going to tell you it's totally intuitive, but I've used it enough now that I feel pretty comfortable with it. And I like that it's not terribly expensive. Do you recommend a fabric combination for linens? No, Tracy. My wife orders those from Amazon and ships them to the cleaner when we need them. So I don't know what we order. I'm sure I could find out. We clean units at the end of the stay. We do not offer daily cleaning. So all good questions. Let me show you. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to pull up my spreadsheet for you because this breaks it down and it tends to answer more questions that people have. Let me see if I can find it. All right, here we go. And guys, I just want you to know right now, I am not an accountant, and you'll probably see that with some of these numbers and how I break it out. But hey, at least I can see what's going on. Okay. All right. So this is February. February is not like a great month for beach condos, but it did all right. So you can see here on this screen, everybody can see an Excel sheet, right? Okay, cool. That looks good. And then I missed some questions. Sorry about that. Do you find your cleaners on Facebook or somewhere else? We started at Facebook. It's word of mouth. We end up knowing people down there, and inevitably you get to know some other owners. We'll say, hey, are you happy with your cleaning service? Who do you use? Things like that. Cleaning fees are, it's a separate fee that I charge in addition to the daily rates. Okay. So that's the only fee that I add on. I know some people will add on a cleaning fee and a parking fee because I do have to pay for parking passes for these people, especially during busy season. But the only thing that I charge extra or separately on VRBO and Airbnb is the cleaning fee. And I think that's fair because, you know, cleaning, I can't really roll it into the rate for a 1-night stay versus a 5-night stay, but it's the same to clean it either way. Anyway, all right, so let me show you how this works. So these are all the stays that I had at my Belle Soleil condo in February. Check-in dates, check-out dates. You can see here every booking that I had was with an Airbnb. This was the money that actually got paid out to me, so was deposited in my account. The net.
His number?
All right, I'm gonna mute that, guys. So the payout price is what was actually deposited in my account. The net revenue is the money that I get after I pay my cleaners and the parking fees. Make sense? So for Belle Soleil, net revenue, it brought in February about $3,100. However, for this unit, this is the most expensive unit that I own. The mortgage is about $4,000. The HOA fees at this unit are $800 a month. The power bill is about $170. The internet is included in the HOA dues. So it cost me about $5,000 a month to own this unit, right? So for the month of February, it was a loss. I lost almost $2,000, is about $1,800 worth of loss in February for Belle Soleil. All right. But if we want to look at a good number, let's look at Seawind here. And this is, I had two really, really good bookings. This guy, if you're looking right here, he was actually there from December through part of February, and he paid about 13 grand to do that. So we love Trent. Hopefully he'll come stay with us next year. But I only am giving myself net revenue of about 2 grand of that because I allocated some of this other money to other months on my spreadsheet. Make sense? But for Seawind net for 1603, that unit brought in about $6,500 net after cleaning fees and parking. The mortgage there is 3 grand a month plus 737 in HOA dues plus a power bill. So it cost me about $3,900 to own it for that month. So it actually made about $2,600 for February. You see that? So what I can do is I can grab all these numbers right here and it sums up to about $2,600. So even in February, across all 5 of my units, I still made profit about $2,500 after paying all of my costs and all of my cleaning fees. Make sense? So not going to complain. We'll take it, especially for February being in the winter. And most everything I own is at the beach. So that's kind of like an average month or kind of a slow month. Just to be totally honest with you, January, I absolutely lost money in January, total across all the units. You can see here, I lost about 2 grand in January to own it. However, to show you fun numbers, because everybody always wants to see the good numbers as well. This is from 2022. Let's pull up July, which is a great month. All right. So in July, I never rented out my lake house. I stayed in the lake house the whole month of July. So you won't see anything lake here. Belle Soleil, Blue Water, Seawind, and then Seawind. So my 2 Seawind units. Belle Soleil netted almost 13 grand. Blue Water netted after cleaning fees, 20 grand, 16 grand, 16 grand for Seawind. Okay. So you see here, the mortgages and all that are still the same. So profit for July of last year summed up to almost 50 grand. And then the factor that I do here, guys, this is just a calculation I do because I'm interested in it. I look and see how many months of revenue or months cost that I bring in. Makes sense? So what this means is the 16 grand would pay for almost 6 months of owning Blue Water. Makes sense? So I covered 6 months of mortgages and cost and 1 month of renting it out. Now, again, it was July and you make all your money in June and July on these condos, but it is definitely a profitable, a profitable investment out there. And then back on Hostify, I can show you this. I don't know why that's messed up so bad. So under the reporting tool here on Hostify, I can actually filter this out so I can show you, and you have to take some of these numbers with a grain of salt. So this is where I'm at year to date. And again, this is revenue deposited in the account. This isn't actually realized revenue. There's no cleaning fees and stuff like that coming out. But I bought 2 new condos last year in April. So if I go like for a full year, you won't really capture everything across the 5 units. But if I customize this to go back to say if I go, let's go April 1st of 2022 to March 31st of 2023, that pretty much captures a full year of owning all 5 properties. So this is where I'm at annually across everything. Now, I don't have this labeled right. Let me show you what these numbers are just to show you. So owner revenue, that's a formula I have built in. It is not owner revenue. It is total revenue. So this is what guests have paid to stay at my units, including taxes, cleaning fees, Airbnb fees, VRBO fees, you name it. If they've paid $1, it's captured in this. Of this money here that they've paid, this is the money that's been deposited into my bank accounts. And to keep up with the counting of it, I just have a different account for each property that I own. Okay. So this is what's been deposited. And then after I pay cleaning and taxes and things like that, this is the revenue that I've actually made that I then have to take from this and pay mortgages and HOA dues and power bills and things like that. Okay. You can see here, it's pretty clear. June and July are the top performing months. That makes sense. May's the next best month that's available. And then obviously August, September, October are all pretty good. I typically make money in these months, certainly not what I make in June and July. Finally, November, December, January, and February, I typically, if I break even in these months, I'm thrilled. I typically lose a little bit, maybe make a little bit. It just depends on the bookings and how we get it and just how the things book up. So those are my numbers. Any questions on any of that? I've got the question, what's the longest stay you would allow? Valerie, if they're going to pay full price, I'm good with them staying however long they want to book it. Okay. So I don't have like a maximum number of days of stay, but I'm priced expensive enough where most people aren't going to book my unit for 6 months. Okay. They're just not. And I'm not a big fan of renting to snowbirds. Meaning if they want to pay full price, I'll do it, but I'm not going to cut my rentals down to, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 a month for them to stay in it in the winter. I would rather it be vacant and me get down there to work on it. Okay. You're welcome. I appreciate that. Yes, Jenna, insurance is a problem at the beach. It just is. So yes, I've seen insurance go up. It was already expensive, so it's hard to say significantly, but the insurance cost on these condos is built into the HOA dues that I pay. And, but it's definitely, I mean, my HOA dues on everything that I own have gone up from when I purchased it. Okay. Will I discount for a week or is it always full price? Generally speaking, I don't discount anything. So I do inside of Hostify. I think it's here. This may be wrong, guys, but we'll see. And again, guys, don't get like lost in this or feel like, oh God, I'll never I've used the software for a couple of years. I promise as you use it, you'll get more and more comfortable with it. And I do think I actually clicked on the right thing here, but under my pricing settings inside of my units, you see right here, I do offer a 1% weekly discount and a 5% monthly discount. I don't really do that because, I mean, that's not really any money. I don't care about it. The reason I do that is because I want Airbnb to see that if they have a blank, I have it filled out. Make sense? My only justification is to be like, oh yeah, there's a discount here. And maybe they might help move my property to the front of the list. But generally speaking, no, I don't offer discounts. Any discounts I do offer, it's built into Price Labs and it's built in as a last minute discount to try to get bookings. Okay. Do I screen tenants? I have a strict policy built into both websites that we will not book to anybody under 25. Okay. So that's how we do it. Do we have some kids get in there because their parents book it for them? Yes, it happens. But that's the policy, and overall it seemed to work pretty well. Heidi, why, or I know it's Amy, not Heidi, sorry about that. Why is the receive column different than the net revenue? It's because I don't manually go through and click on these reservations every time when we receive the money. So I just miss some, but the revenue there is received. And something that I do every month to audit when I, when I fill in. So like here in, a couple weeks, I'm going to create a new sheet here for the month of March. And when I do that, I go through my bank statements and make sure these deposits that Hostify says I should have gotten, because I run this report actually from Hostify, I make sure that my bank statements line up with that. Makes sense? And as long as my bank statements line up, then I know that all that money's come through. So that's how I make sure everything comes through. Something else to point out for February, just because it's highlighted, I want to let you know. So Andrea, that's actually my wife. She went down to work on this unit for a few days. So that's why the revenue was actually negative for that stay, because we still paid to have it clean, obviously. Tanya Kennedy, she went down for 2 weeks, but she actually worked. So she repainted all of my cabinets in the kitchen at this unit. And then she stayed a week. So we kind of did a swap for a stay for her labor and her effort working on my kitchen. So even though, you know, technically with this number right here, I only made $2,600 in February. That was $2,600 plus about $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever it would have cost me to actually pay someone to paint the cabinets in the kitchen there. Okay. So just a heads up on that. So actually February was, when you account for that, it was a really good month for February. Hopefully it's a sign of things to come for the travel season this year. We'll see. All right, guys, so we got about 10 minutes left. I've got one more thing I want to hit on, but before we do that, any questions? Everybody good? All right, so we're going to wrap up with this. So if everybody, I'm seeing some people here excited and motivating. I'm thrilled. I hope this is motivating. Again, I got into it, and the more I got into it, the more excited I got. And I've got brothers. And if this whole business just, you know, it obliterates overnight and there's a huge crash, I'm going to have to disappear because everybody I know and love has bought one as a result of me showing them some numbers. And that's kind of what gave birth to this class, just so y'all know. But I can tell you, if you want to do this, but you're not at a place to do it now, then I would tell you, you're going to know more than a lot of people out there. Go get clients and sell them houses. Go use this information, guys, and get referrals for people buying at the beach or people buying, you know, in the mountains or whatever, if that's not your area of expertise. But the number one objection you're going to get, I'm telling you, because I work with people every day looking to get into this business, is should I really buy real estate in this market? Make sense? So the common objections, what's a common objection you get from anyone looking to buy real estate right now? You know, aren't we headed for a recession? Well, there aren't any good deals. Prices are too high. I'll wait for a foreclosure. I love that one. Have you seen how high rates are? Aren't we headed for another crash? You know, these are the common objections that we're getting right now. And what I want to walk you through is exactly what I walk other people through when I get these objections. A lot of us were in real estate, or many of us obviously lived through the Great Recession. And, you know, I think there's a certain amount of PTSD in real estate. You have to remember back in 2008, Easy Credit had made it available for anyone to buy a home. Homes were way, way, way overbuilt. We had huge, you know, way too much inventory on the market, and poor loan performance fueled the credit crisis that caused the collapse of housing prices. But understand, first of all, people say, oh, aren't we headed for a recession? Well, these gray areas here on the chart, guys, these are recessions, and the blue line is home prices. And you can see home prices tend to do really well during recessions, with the one caveat being the 2008 recession, when the housing market's what caused the recession. But generally speaking, houses do really, really well during recessions. And the market is always governed by supply and demand. What I'll show you is, you can see here, this is a chart of the population of the US and the birth rate in the US. And in 1973, you can see we had population births down, and then stayed flat for multiple years. And these people, your average home buyer, your first-time home buyer, is about 35 years old. And these were all the people that were buying houses in 2008. Well, we lost a bunch of demand that stayed low just because everybody has to have a place to live. Well, the people that are 35-year-old now were born in this time frame here. So demand is growing and should be growing. That's one of the reasons we have such an inventory problem. Another reason we have an inventory problem is after the crash, we literally built no homes. We built almost as few homes as we built back in the 1930s. You see that? So we haven't been supplying the market with homes, but demand's been growing. That's why we have the market we have now. I'm not going to bore you with the details of all this, because this goes into pretty good depth, but I do like to show customers this. Foreclosures are at an all-time low right now. Loan performance is awesome. The CoreLogic equity report that came out at the end of 2022 said 37% of homes were owned free and clear in today's market, and that mortgaged homes saw a 16% increase in equity, a combination of appreciation plus people paying their mortgage down. Only less than 2% of homes right now have negative equity. Does anybody want to guess how many homes had negative equity during the housing bubble? 25%. So we are nowhere near where we were back in 2008. Okay. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, the growth in home prices has all been towards interest rates and it was government subsidized. And, we're not going to get back to that. That's caused homes to accelerate higher than they should have. Well, maybe there were some artificially low rates after COVID, but let me show you another study that I found that I thought was phenomenally interesting. So the Federal Reserve of San Francisco, they did a study on remote work and how remote work affected home prices throughout the nation. And what they found is that obviously, we had about 5% of workers working from home before the pandemic. When the pandemic started, we had as many as 60% of workers working from home, and that's trailed off. But it looks like this is going to even out somewhere around 25 to 30% of workers will either be working from home or have like a hybrid work model. Well, what they found out is they found out that in markets where they were more geared towards remote work, say like in San Francisco or somewhere where you have a bunch of tech jobs and people can work from home, it's easier to work from home at those industries than it is, say, if you're in Detroit building cars, right? You have to go to the factory to build a car. So what they found is that because of more people working from home, it shifted demand for homes. And because of that, the markets where, or the cities where it was more it was easier to do remote work, those cities saw an improvement or increase in home prices versus cities and places where remote work was not as easy to do. So the result of the study is they said that hybrid work or working from home has increased 5 times since before COVID. This has shifted value of commercial properties to residential properties because you've got companies out there that aren't renewing leases. They don't need all this office space like we needed before. And the conclusion of the study was that the increased demand for housing due to remote work as a result of the pandemic accounts for over 60% of the house price increase since the pandemic. Yes, the interest rates had something to do with it, but just understand that more people working from home, demand for more space at home, people needing an office, a place at some point in time to homeschool kids, not sending kids back to school. The result of the study is that just the shift in how we work in America has caused a big change in home prices. Okay. So I tell people, look, why invest in real estate? Because it's fundamentally strong. It's because, yeah, if you invest now, rates are higher, but when rates come down, loans can always be refinanced. And finally, hopefully you've seen with these tools that real estate can generate passive income and you can absolutely make money while you're asleep. All right. Some other things we didn't talk about, other classes, but there's huge tax advantages to owning short-term rentals, specifically bonus depreciation. There's ways that you can use cost segregation analysis on short-term rentals to accelerate depreciation on these properties and save tons of money on your taxes. Here's some resources, guys. If you visit my website, zanderteam.com/STR, you can fill out your information. And if you fill out that information, it'll immediately drop you on the link to get the course slides and materials. You can go to str4income.com. I don't use this a lot, but it will land you on a Facebook page where I post information from time to time. Obviously, you can always call me at my office line. I'm available for sales meetings, CE classes, lunch and learns, masterminds. And I'm going to scroll back through the chat and make sure we've got all the CE stuff, all the questions answered. Certainly, if you have any questions, again, hold down spacebar, unmute yourself, type it in the box. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And like I said, we're going to get these questions answered. And I hope the class was helpful for you today. Let's see. How do I handle hurricane season and insurance premiums? Tracy, I pay the insurance premiums, and when it's hurricane season, I pray they blow somewhere else. Yeah, it's just part of owning it there. Honestly, I probably need to buy a couple of short-term rentals in a market other than the Gulf. The problem is I know that market now, and I'm happy with the returns I get there, so it's hard to get away from it. But I probably do need to branch out. Do I have a way to get discounted properties, Alicia? No, I don't. If you've got a way, let me know and I'll split it with you, okay? Valentina, I agree. Today's a better time to buy than tomorrow. The way I always look at it is the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, but the next best time to plant a tree is today. Cassandra, can a timeshare be used for an STR? Absolutely. I mean, the key is if you've got a place that people can stay and you can market it and offer it for rent, sure. I don't see why that wouldn't work. Thanks so much, Cynthia, for the kind words. I appreciate that. Let's see. Where's the best place to find homes that are USDA eligible? Off the record, or kind of different question. Valentina, the best website for that is isitrural.com. So if you go, you just pull up your web browser, you go to isitrural.com. Hope it still works. Yep, this is your eligibility map. You can click on that and check your property eligibility here by typing in an address to see what's USDA eligible. I also teach a whole separate CE course on USDA loans. So if you want to browse for that, we go into all the bloody gory details about how to close a USDA loan. Lindsay, you're absolutely right. The remote work has also driven up demand for Airbnbs and VRBOs, and another reason I think to be in the market. Let's see. Susan, thank you. I appreciate that. Always appreciate the kind words. Guys, if the survey didn't get finished, it's not a big deal. Looks like everybody's got their information typed back in, so it sounds good. Let's see. Can you tell us about your umbrella policy? Jenna, I just know I have the biggest, nicest, biggest coverage one my insurance agent had available. And that's all I know about it. For those of you that aren't familiar with umbrella policies, is they cover you like an umbrella if any other policy doesn't cover you or runs out of coverage. And that's part of how I monitor or manage the risk of owning some of these properties, is understanding if I get sued, you know, there's insurance for that, but then there's also an umbrella policy to cover any holes or cracks in the coverage that I do have. Let's see. Thanks so much. Where close to Atlanta can we buy an STR? Kim, you can buy anything and turn it into a short-term rental. The key is to, you know, look online and use some of these tools to get a realistic estimation or guess at what the properties will bring in. Some properties will do better as a long-term rental. They just will. Some of them will do better as a short-term rental. It's just, you know, knowing that and knowing what you want to do. But as far as close to Atlanta, it makes sense to me that something near the Braves game through Truist would be a pretty good investment if you want to stay close to Atlanta, but I haven't done a whole lot of research in the metro Atlanta area. Thanks, guys. Again, really, really appreciate all the kind words. Valentina, can you put in the chat, please? Oh, was it those links that you wanted in the chat? Xanderteam.com/STR. All right. Got to get back, since I typed, I got to get back up to where the questions were to make sure I don't miss anything. Sorry about that, guys. Give me just a second. Okay, here we go. Very cool. I scrolled up too far, so I'm reading a bunch of the same stuff again. Here we go. Do you provide coffee, tea, snacks, spices, etc.? Is this necessary, Robert? We don't. The headache of managing that and trying to keep up with, do we still have chips, or are we out of chips, or we're out of coffee, have to go run pick it up? I found it doesn't really matter. I'm sure guests appreciate that, but more than anything, I think they appreciate being very clear about what you do provide. So I do let them know, obviously, we've got towels, and we have like a starter pack that includes like, a roll of toilet paper for each bathroom, and, some soap and stuff like that. But I think as long as we set that expectation right, and then it's less that we have to keep up with. And honestly, in these condos, they're not real big. I mean, they might be 1,100 square feet. So there is a certain amount of just not having closet space to keep that if you're going to have multiple, towels and linens and bed sheets and things like that. So we don't provide that. I'm not necessarily against it, but I've just found, the headache of trying to keep up with it was crazy. Thank you again, guys. Thanks very much for the kind words. I really appreciate it. Let's see. What insurance do you have for those direct books? So for the direct bookings, we actually collect a security deposit that we return once we get that the green light is good. There's ways to sign up for like those insurance policies where people, pay for the coverage and all that. I just haven't implemented that as part of my direct booking. And honestly, I don't get a lot of direct bookings, so it's not really a problem. But if I do get one, we just collect and there is some headache there because then I have to return the security deposit, right? But it's not a big enough deal. I don't get enough direct bookings where it's a big deal. Tracy, I have no idea what my umbrella limits are. Sorry, I just have no idea. Any close by areas you can buy short-term rentals? I'm sure there is. The USDA course, guys, if you're in this, you're going to get the information from Dana Sparks, and you can just keep your eyes open for that. But I teach any of the financing courses, USDA, FHA, VA loans, stuff like that. I teach all those in addition to this class. Qualifications for purchasing a vacation home, Jamie, we hit on kind of the highlights of that at the very beginning of the course. But if you want to buy as a second home, it's 10% down, and you have to have enough income to qualify for the payment. For an investment property, again, I really recommend a minimum of 20% down. And then the key is, do you qualify with the income that you currently have for the debt you currently have? The home should pay for itself and should cash flow, but I can only use that cash flowing income on an investment loan. I can't use that on a second home. Obviously, the higher the credit score, the better, but any investment home or second home loan is going to be harder to qualify from a credit standpoint than a primary residence. I would think minimum, we can try to get it pushed through the system, but kind of 680, I would say, is the number we need to be at or above to try to qualify for a standard loan. Let's see. Thanks so much. Do I have a lot of problems with damages to the unit? Amy, I really don't. It does happen. If there's something like major, then we'll put in a claim with Airbnb or VRBO or the damage insurance. Like I've had a guest that just completely tore up our coffee table one time. So obviously we charged them for that. But it's, again, I don't go through the headache of keeping up with someone, stained a towel. We just throw it away and move on. And I try to keep it, it's got to be worth the headache and the time of documenting it for me to mess with it. But that's the only reason that we would. Oh yeah, and guys, if y'all are done, you're welcome to log off. We're obviously past time now. I should have said that. So all of my private insurance, guys, is through a company called Stallings Insurance Agency, and that's who I used for the umbrella policy. Jacqueline, good question. No, I do not allow pets. None, the units that I own in, the HOA doesn't allow pets unless you're an owner. And that's because you have to register the pet and make sure if they had an issue or if a pet bit somebody or something, there's some liability there. So, but no, we do not allow pets. Thank you. I appreciate that. You have a good day as well. All right, guys, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and log off and end the meeting. Again, thanks so much for coming and hanging out. And certainly if I can be of assistance, pre-qualify anybody, answer any questions, you've got my contact information and look forward to working with you. All right. Y'all have a good one. Thanks so much.